Prowl 1701 here, and today we're going to be ranking every episode of 70s Doctor Who, from Spearhead to Space through Shada. We will be including Shada, even though I know Shada wasn't released originally, in the 70s, and even if it had been, it technically would have come out in early 1980. But for the sake of just keeping it easy, we're going to be ranking all of season 17. All of the stories in it in the 70s, because it's my list and that's how I want to do it. And we have 59 stories, if I've done my counting right and haven't forgotten anything. We have 59 stories in the 70s to get through. This is going to be a fun one for me. The 70s is my favorite decade of Doctor Who, so a lot of these stories are just out and out classics. It was really hard to order them because when you love so much of this era, how do you put one above the other in some cases? It was actually really difficult to do this list. Of all, writing out the list for 60s, 70s, and 80s Doctor Who was extremely difficult, but I think the 70s was the hardest because I love this decade so much. It is just the golden era of Doctor Who for me, my favorite decade of Doctor Who. But we do have it. We've got our list, 59 stories, and we're going to start at the very bottom of the list in 59th place. And it is Power of Prowl. I don't know how many of you were expecting that or not, but yeah, I do find Power of Prowl to be the weakest story, which is a little hurtful for me because I love Bob Holmes. Robert Holmes is just an amazing writer. I think he's the best writer the show's ever had, but I don't click with this story. I don't think this story is just out and out garbage. Like, it's not like just terrible. It's borderline watchable. I find it's probably the only Tom Baker story I do have trouble, it might be unwatchable. It's really hard. It has a couple good points in it, but for the most part, I don't really care for it. I do remember when I was watching Jess's reaction to it on Seska Says, there was a couple little bits that popped up that I liked. Like when he's telling the one guy, you got that look on your face that says you're putting 2 + 2 together and getting 4. I love that whole little bit. That's funny. It has a couple other little moments in it. The story itself, again, it's not Bob Holmes' best. It's probably his weakest in my opinion. But it's not a bad story on paper. It's fine. It's okay. It's the execution of it that doesn't work for me. A lot of the shots of Kroll don't work for me, especially with that little horizon line. Ugh. The Swampies don't look for me with what obviously looks like green paint. It just doesn't work. The little fake Kroll doesn't, just so much of the story, the location work doesn't really, it's just a lot of different elements that for me personally just do not work in the execution that really pulls this one down. And then the guy, that one green guy that still thinks Kroll is working for them, despite all the contrary to it, right in his face, all the proof saying, no, Kroll just wants to eat people. It just doesn't come together. A couple good moments, not really a good story. The only Tom Baker story I'd call borderline unwatchable. It's not terrible. It's not trash. It's not garbage. There's a big difference between bad classic Doctor Who stories and bad modern Doctor Who stories. There's a big difference in quality there. Very seldom is classic Doctor Who unwatchable when in modern Who there's definitely some garbage that's unwatchable. But Power of Prowl coming in last for me. I just don't click with it. The story is okay, but the execution just doesn't work for me. At number 58 on the list is The Invisible Enemy. This one is all right. I don't really get into it. It's watchable. I mean, we're second from the bottom, and we're already into stories I'd call watchable. I don't really enjoy it much. It's got some stuff I like. It's got the guy who plays K9's inventor. I like him. I know he's in some other stories as well. I like him. I like the actor playing him. I like the character. He's really cool. It also has one of the other actors that's in a lot of the story, the guy who plays Scarman's brother in Pyramid of Mars. I guess it was also technically a Scarman. He also plays in Remembrance of the Daleks. I like him, so it's happy to have him back. It's great for being an introduction to K9. We get K9. I love K9. But the set designs don't really work for me. The CSO, when they're inside the Doctor's body, occasionally does work, but oftentimes does not work. Some shots work really well. A lot of shots don't. The realization of the creature doesn't really work. The actual story doesn't really work. It's watchable and has some elements I like, but for the most part, I don't really care for it. I don't ever have the desire to go back and rewatch it. Although I do like the updated effects that the DVD has. That's nice. Number 57 on the list is The Invasion of Time. And a lot of this is just down to the fact the budget's not there. The effects on this one are just abysmal. You can tell the budget ran out. It's just not there. The story, I don't really care for the story either, to be honest. It isn't bad. And it's a nice fake out of you think they solved everything, then the Centaurans show up when you don't expect. It's a great cliffhanger when the Centaurans show up and just pulls out his gun. Great cliffhanger. The exit of Leela is one of the worst in the show's history, especially post-60s. It's really, really bad. It's very out of character for Leela, and it feels very rushed. It's a terrible companion exit. The updated special effects help. I haven't ever got to watch the story all the way through with those, but I have seen the updated effects themselves on YouTube. They do look like a huge improvement, and maybe if I ever get the DVD release of it, or when the season 15 box set comes out and I can actually watch it all the way through with the updated effects, I might appreciate it a little more, although they still can't fix those shoddy TARDIS interior scenes, which are just atrociously bad. So you have a story that's all right in some places, bad in other places, with a not great execution because there's no money there. So this is easily the weakest Tom Baker season finale for me. Next on the list is The Claws of Axon, my least favorite Pertwee story, though watchable. It's easily watchable. Has aspects I like. The Master is great. The Master and John together are great. You know, we've got Unit, which I always like. The guy who plays like the FBI agent who's tracking down the Master, I like him a lot. The fight scene when he's fighting the Axon disguised as him, or the clone of him, or whatever it is choreographed really well, especially for the time, since they couldn't do CGI to have both the faces on there. Their choice of camera angles is really well done. That's a really well-directed, well-choreographed fight scene between what is supposed to be the same actor playing two people, even though it isn't. The Axon's design in their normal form looks good, but their little hippie golden helmeted form looks weird. The story for me, I don't really get into. Is kind of what lets it down for me. I just kind of get bored with it, to be honest. The bit with the bum at the beginning just feels like a waste of time. The interior set design for the Axon ship, I don't like. I get what it's going for. It's supposed to look organic because it's all one organism. I get that. I don't like it, though. It's just a design choice I don't care for. I find it uninteresting. It's got some stuff I like in it. But I just find it uninteresting. But still watchable. All of the Pertwee era is at least watchable. Next on the list is Nightmare of Eden, which I enjoyed. I have only watched this all the way through with the updated effects, because I watched it for the first time in the box set, although I've seen the regular effects on YouTube, and they are pretty rough. The updated effects help a lot, although why they went with teal for the laser blast, I'll never get over. Teal's such a boring color. The story is fine. It's a nice drug use allegory, which you don't really see in Doctor Who much. It's interesting. The guy doing the German accent is... that's kind of the weakest part of the story, to be honest. The mandrill design is okay. I don't think it's as bad as some people do. I think the mandrills would have worked better if they'd kept them more in shadow and hadn't had the studio so brightly lit. If it had been darker and they'd been in shadow more, that would have worked better. The updated effects look really good for the ships colliding and being pulled apart. I enjoyed that. I like this. It's a bit forgettable. I've only watched it the one time, but I found it more enjoyable than its reputation, to be honest. And next on the list is The Hand of Fear. This is mainly just due to it falling apart in the 4th episode. You know, a lot of things can be forgiven if you stick the landing. This one does the opposite. The first 3 episodes are really good. Not my favorite Doctor Who, to be honest, but still really good. But the 4th episode, it really fumbles the ball. I think they should have just stuck with the female Eldrad. Bringing in the male Eldrad doesn't work for me. It's very obviously Stephen Thorne. And I just associate his voice so much with Omega that whenever I hear it, it takes me out of the story. I had the same problem with the Daemons. because I'm just sitting here going, that's Omega. That's the voice of Omega, and it pulls me out. It reminds me that I'm watching a television show that uses the same actors a lot. The bit when he trips over the scarf is so laughably bad. When he just, I can't forgive those things. They just bother me. Although the Hell Eldrad, ruler of nothing or king of nothing, I love that line. That's really good. It's nice how that ends. And the goodbye between the Doctor and Sarah is actually really good. Really, really good. It's a great companion departure. But it just ranks here for me. Hand of Fear is not a story I like to go back and revisit a lot like some people do. I don't know why. I don't have the interest in it that some people do. I mean, even the first 3 parts, while being good, I don't ever really desire to go back and rewatch them much. There's just other Doctor Who stories from the Tom Baker era I'd rather rewatch, like all the ones we're going to talk about further up on the list. Next on the list is The Ambassadors of Death. That's such a cool title. The only problem with Ambassadors of Death is it's too long. I actually really like the story to Ambassadors of Death. The idea that it's friendly aliens and it's kind of some of the humans that are the dirtbags. I enjoy that. It's a nice twist on that formula. I enjoy the performances. I enjoy some of the iconic shots, the astronauts where you can't see their faces and how they can kill people the way they do. The model shots look really good. It is a little let down by the quality of the episodes not looking so good because, of course, the original masters for Ambassadors, well, 2 through 7 are lost. Ambassador Episode 1 is actually the earliest surviving video master tape in all of Doctor Who. But 2 through 7, of course, are from other sources, and it looks rough. It looks very, 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 very rough. But yeah, it's just too long. This needed to be 4 parts. Maybe 5, but 4 parts. It's 7 parts, I get bored. A lot of stuff's happening, and I'm just there watching going, something happened? Did I fall asleep again? It's this low just because of the length. It's too long. Ambassadors of Death needs an omnibus. Why have we never gotten an omnibus for Ambassadors of Death? Somebody make me an omnibus for Ambassadors of Death, and it will shoot up this list. Next on the list is The Mutants, which I figured would have been a little higher. I placed it really high, or higher, when I was ranking season 9. I really enjoyed my watch through of The Mutants, which was my first time seeing it. However, I noted at the time that I don't know how I'll feel about it on repeat viewing, because so much of what had me watching The Mutants and egging me on was wondering what happened next. It did a really good job of making me want to watch the next episode. Like, man, that was good. What happens next? What happens next? Like, I remember at the end of part 3, I was like, man, it feels like it's going to wrap up. How are they going to extend this for 6 parts? Because it's not a 4-parter, it's a 6-parter. And then stuff happened in episode 4 that extended it on in a good way. So the constant wondering of how the story was going to progress really kept me engaged with it. But now that I've seen it, I don't know how I'll feel about it on a rewatch. But I like The Mutants. It does a really good job of talking about the dangers of segregation and colonialism. I think the mutant design looks really good. The effect of Key, or whatever his name is at the end when he looks like the butterfly, is really well done. The guy playing the main antagonist is so good. I like him in this one. Like the guy who talks to the little thing. The actor playing him does a really good job. I really got to give him props for that. And it's got, Jeff or Jeffrey in it. He's only in the first episode. He gets assassinated, but I like him a lot. You know, he's also in Doctor Who and the Silurians, and he's also in Voyage of the Damned, actually. Not Voyage of the Damned. Is it Voyage of the Damned? Voyage of the Damned. The one from when they're on the Titanic in the modern series. I like him a lot, so it's got him in it. So I like The Mutants. I'm just curious how it will hold up for me on rewatch. Although I do think it could have used some updated effects, honestly. Next on the list, just slightly above it, I really could have flipped these two, they're really close, is Planet of the Daleks, especially since I like The Mutants and I don't really care for Planet of the Daleks. That's kind of weird. Maybe I should have flipped them. But again, I'm not quite sure how The Mutants is going to age for me. Planet of the Daleks has a couple neat concepts it abandons quickly, especially like the Daleks trying to learn invisibility. They kind of drop that quick and focus more on the disease bomb thing. The set design for it is fine. The invisible creatures with the cloaks is good for a budget reason, but just from a story standpoint, it doesn't really do much for me. I do love the episode 1 cliffhanger when the Doctor is like, Daleks! I like that. Would have been way more shocking if it wasn't a story called Planet of the Daleks, but I just never get into this one. It's great to see the Thalls again, and it's always great to have Bernard back whenever he plays in any Doctor Who story. He's so good. But I just don't connect with this one. I do actually prefer this one with the original updated effects as well. It's one of the 1 or 2 stories I prefer with the original updated effects. The original effects. I don't really care for the updated effects. I much prefer the original effects. This isn't one I like to go back to very often. If it was a 4-parter, it might be more forgiving, but at 6 parts, it's just boringly overlong. Next on the list is Frontier in Space. I enjoy Frontier in Space. I don't like that abrupt ending. It feels like the ending is rushed just so they can tie it in with Planet of the Daleks, which hurts it. I enjoy a third party manipulating 2 honorable forces into a war that neither one of them want to be in. I love the Draconians as a concept. I love how well they're executed. I love their makeup style. I can see why Pertwee is such a huge fan of was such a huge fan of them as well. That was his favorite Doctor Who baddie. He was really, really fond of them. I don't know. There is a lot of they get free, they get captured, they get free, they get captured, they get free, they get captured in this. But it's executed well. The scenes when people are seeing their enemies, even though it's actually the Ogrons, the way a little effect where they do that is really well done. The Master is used well in this. Although I do wish the final scene with him, since it did end up being Delgado's final scene, was better. It's not really the episode's fault. Nobody knew Delgado was going to pass away so soon after this. But I do wish it was just a little better. And again, that ending is just too rushed. I think if this had had a proper conclusion, instead of having to tie it in with Planet, it would have been better. Next on the list is the Sea Devils. And I'm surprised this one places so low, because I tend to love the Sea Devils. But my last watch of it was a bit anticlimactic. I just did not get into the story as much as I normally do, which was kind of surprising. I love the Sea Devil design. That is a great iconic design, very reminiscent of like a turtle head. I like that. I enjoyed the story. I love the fact they actually got the Navy to take part in it. Gives us a little breather from units. Nice to have some other military people in. I love that they get to use the hovercraft. I think the Master is utilized really well in it. I absolutely love Delgado in this story. I love that the Doctor even mentions how they used to be friends long ago, and you can kind of get the rapport between them. We get that awesome sword fight between them in it. I absolutely love that, with that cliffhanger of him throwing the knife at the Doctor. It's really good. Some good cliffhangers in this one, like when they're walking out of the sea. Get that cool scene when the Doctor uses the sonic to set off mines. And of course the great ending with the Master escaping. It's a really good story. Just for some reason, I've seen this story probably 3 or 4 times now. Though some reason the last watch through just didn't grab me as often as it usually does. And I think I'm just basing it mostly off my last watch through, why it's placed this low. Next on the list is Doctor Who and the Silurians. I tend to think of these two right next to each other, so it doesn't surprise me that they're right next to each other in ranking. I think that was the same thing when I was ranking the 3rd Doctor era. I think it was the same way. Silurian's biggest problem is it's too long. It does plod a little bit. I think even if it had just been 6 parts, it would have worked better. Also, again, it looks a little rough, the restoration work on it, because all of the episodes are from different sources. None of them are the original masters. And so it looks rough. It really needs some work done on the technical side of it. From a story standpoint, I think at 6 parts it'd have been fine. 7 parts is just too much. Just too much. All 7 parts are missing, I should say. I do like how at the end things ramp up with the disease getting out and getting everywhere, which is kind of haunting when you realize in 2023 what all we've been through the past 3 years. It kind of makes that a little harder to watch now. Of course, it's got Jeff in it. I like Jeff playing the kind of minister guy who came down to inspect stuff and is the one who accidentally carries the plague everywhere. It's got was it Peter Miles? Is that his name? The same guy who plays Niter. I always love when he shows up in Doctor Who, so it's great to see him here. I love the way he plays the guy in charge of the facility and how he flips out and has his death scene at the end. I like Liz a lot as a companion, so I'm always happy to see Liz back. She gets a few things to do here. Not enough. I don't feel like she's utilized enough here, but she gets some stuff to do. Just the main reason it's above Sea Devils is I love the ending. I love the ending of this episode. The bit when the Brigadier blows up the Silurians, that whole speech Pertwee gives at the end, which never feels like pandering, or it never feels like he's talking down to the audience or he's talking directly to the audience, like, say, Orphan 55 or Warriors of the Deep. It feels like he's talking to Liz, and we just happen to be third-person observers of it. The way Pertwee delivers it and how he's looking slightly off the camera is just really well done. I love that ending so much that it bumps it up a few places from where it would be otherwise. Because otherwise, while still being a good story, it just drags a bit. And next on the list, probably higher than some people would have it, is the Time Monster. I actually really enjoyed my watch through of the Time Monster. I think from a story standpoint, it's good. I like it. I like when Doctor Who messes with time like this. I like the Master's plan in this. Some of the execution doesn't work, like the Kronos creature looks terrible. The little bird thing that's right up here, it looks awful. It looks bad. The scene at the end when they're talking to like the female version of Kronos with that weird CSO looking, that makes my eyes hurt, I'll be honest. But I enjoyed the story. I love when they get to Atlantis. I love the stuff on Atlantis. The bit with the Minotaur also is a little naff. I accept it because it's David Prowse, and it's nice to have David Prowse in Doctor Who. You know, Darth Vader himself in Doctor Who is pretty cool, but the actual scene is a bit silly. I love having Ingrid Pitt in it. She just is fabulous. I mean, first of all, her performance is fabulous. Secondly, the costume designer who did her outfit is also fabulous, and she's fabulous in that outfit. I like the kind of flirtatious manner she has with the Master. It's really interesting when they're talking to each other. I love the King. I love the King of Atlantis. That whole bit when the Master tries to get the better of and hypnotizing the King, just I love the King. I was very upset when he died. I love the King. He was great. The actor playing him just nailed it. And I like the fact that it doesn't work on Ingrid Pitt either, that she's like, no. You know, I might be letting you do this because I like you, but don't cross me. I like her character in this. But even the stuff before that, I mean, we even had a nice little scene with Terry Walsh. I remember seeing him on the ladder, and I'm like, that's Terry Walsh. I like when I see Terry Walsh in Doctor Who, one of the unsung heroes of Doctor Who. I enjoy this one. I can understand why it's not ranked high, but I do still think it's underrated. And the restoration work on the Season 9 box set makes it look really, really good. Next on the list is the Monster of Peladon. Monster and Curse are always really close for me. It's hard for me to put one over the other. Monster slightly loses out because it's longer. I really like that Curse is only 4 parts, whereas Monster is 6. 6 parts feels a little long for it. But Monster works for me because it's Sarah Jane's great in it. It's one of the best written stories for how Sarah Jane is written. She's very independent, very fierce, strong sense of individuality. And I love her outfit and her haircut in it, that no-nonsense, you know, I'm nobody's sidekick type. I like that. The bit when they're like telling her to get on her knees, and that's your consort, and he's like, I am not his. And John's having to hold her down, like, stay down. I like the banter between them when he's like, we're going to see my friend the King. And she's like, name dropping, yeah. So I do enjoy that. The actress playing the Queen in it puts in a good performance. The Miner's hair, I am never going to get over because that's just silly. I just feel like it's a little long at 6 parts. It's great to see Agador back. I like Agador. And I like the guy playing the engineer who's also in the Space Pirates. He does a good job as well. Even though early on I'm like, I don't know about this guy. But the actor playing him does a good job. So it's a good story. I just wish it was a 4-parter instead of a 6-parter. Which brings me to the next one on the list, which is Curse of Peladon. Again, I tend to think of these two right next to each other. Curse I like a little better because it is 4 parts and that just works better for me. The restoration work on the box set looks really good, by the way. David Troughton is great as the king, very much playing a kind of naive young king that needs a little guidance. David plays that really well. I like the connection between Joe and the king. That's really nice. Interesting to see the Ice Warriors back in color for the first time. And I love that the Ice Warriors turn out to be good guys in this one. And the fact that the Doctor's own prejudices blind him to the truth for so long because he's so adamant that it's the Ice Warriors doing it, that it blinds him to the truth that it could be someone else and that the Ice Warriors could be sincere about being the good guys. I like that because I do feel like if there is a Doctor that would have fallen for that and just assumed he was right without thinking it through, it would be the third Doctor. I think that is a flaw of his character. So I think that's done really, really well. Also, I tend to like the set designs for both the Peladon stories. I think have really good set designs. I tend to like the caves and stuff. So yeah, I enjoy both of these stories, even if I don't think they're top tier Doctor Who. Next on the list is The Deadly Assassin. Yes, one of the most overrated stories in all of Doctor Who. This story in a bubble by itself is fine. And it's nice to have a Doctor Who story without a companion where it's just the Doctor. It's nice to have a story on Gallifrey. But when you put it in context with the rest of the show, I have issues. It ruins the Time Lords. They have never recovered. It takes the Time Lords from being the godlike, powerful entities that they had been previously to one extent or another, and basically makes them humans. It makes them human politicians bickering over silly things, talking about sore hips. I never look at the Time Lords the same way again from here on out. They're always way more fallible. Like, in the earlier stories, you understand why the Doctor does not want to get involved with these people, why he's almost afraid of them, you understand why Troughton was trying so hard to get away in the War Games. Whereas here, petty people, petty humans, own little power struggles, and it's great having Bernard back again. I always like when he's back. It's an interesting way to take the Master, and Peter Pratt is putting in a good performance as the Master. I love the guy playing the Castellan. I love him so much. He's so good. This is easily my favorite Castellan that we've ever had. He's just so good. I love the bit when he's talking to the guard. He's like, and then you let him do this. You're trying to confuse him, I think. I love that. That could be my favorite moment in the whole episode. I love the bit when Tom is giving his confession. I confessed it. I love that whole bit. The bit in The Matrix, I don't really care for. When Tom is in The Matrix, I mean, that's very ahead of its time. I mean, it's kind of predicts The Matrix, the movie The Matrix. Honestly, it's very ahead of its time. But those scenes, despite the iconic imagery, they never really work for me. I never really care for them. I don't really get into them at all. I'm always happy when that part's over with and he gets back out of the Matrix. I just don't get into this one as much. Plus, the set for the Panopticon is a bit of a letdown. I mean, it's classic Who budget, but I just never find it that impressive. I don't know. On its own, it's fine, but I find Deadly Assassin very, very overrated. It's one of the ones I go back to the least these days, even though I've probably seen it 4 times at least. And next on the list is Underworld. I actually like Underworld better than most. I enjoy the story itself. I like that it dips into Time Lord lore a little bit to kind of explain why they have their non-interference policy, which kind of makes sense because we have heard in stories where back in the day they used to interfere, like when they took out all the vampires way back when. It's interesting to get an explanation of that, even though the explanation is also kind of given with Tom's sense of humor. You know, they learn how to split the atom, and eventually the planet. It's like, it's serious, but it's also a little funny the way he does it. I think the ship design is pretty cool. I like the fact that it has a heat shield when it rises and lowers. That's a pretty cool effect. The model work in this story is phenomenally good, especially what you see in episode 1 and episode 4. Episodes 1 and 4, the bookend episodes, are definitely the highlight of this 4-parter. It's very much a 4-parter that knows it only needs to be a 4-parter. I have a lot of respect for stories like that. And the model work is some of the best in classic Doctor Who. It's actually really impressive. The cast do a good job. The set designs are hit or miss. It depends on where they are. Like the bit with the rogue AI, not the most original idea, but it's there. At the end isn't great, but the set of the main ship, I think looks fine. The cast, I enjoy. I like their little weapons, the little shield lasers. That's pretty cool. The fact they can shoot a laser, but also act as a shield in like a combo. I enjoy that. I think that's a creative idea. I like the little stun laser that just makes everybody docile. It's funny when it's used on Leela. That's amusing to me. I love the bit about the quest is the quest. I love Tom using that. They're like, oh, not you, Doctor. And he's like, the quest is the quest. But not your quest, Doctor. I love the quest is the quest. I don't know why, but I love that. I like the fact they can kind of regenerate themselves, kind of like Time Lords can, but with the same appearance. In some ways, that's kind of more advanced than Time Lord technology, though they need a machine to do it. The way they can rejuvenate themselves is pretty cool, pretty impressive. The hardest part is the CSO work. Let's be honest, that's the elephant in the room here. The CSO work is pretty bad, especially in episode 3. The CSO work in episode 2 doesn't bother me as much. It seems like they tried to be smarter with it, like the director tried to find a way to make it work. Whereas in episode 3, it's like the director just said, screw it. And it looks pretty bad. That is the main nitpick of the episode. It's not essential Doctor Who, even from a story standpoint, but it's one I enjoy. And I definitely think I hold it in higher esteem than most people do. I think most people just immediately when they think of Underworld, they go, bad special effects, and they write it off. And that's it. That's all that goes to their head. They have a very two-dimensional opinion of it that, bad special effects, the caves look terrible, and they're out. And that's because of the CSO work, which is arguably bad. Well, not arguably, it's pretty bad. But the model work for me in episodes 1 and 4 make up for it. That model work is stupendous. It is great. It is really good. So I like Underworld more than most. Next on the list is the Robots of Death, the most overrated story possibly in all of classic Doctor Who. Robots of Death is good, but it's not good because of the story. I actually find the story uninteresting. Like, it's one of those on first watch I liked it, but on rewatch it kind of bores me, to be honest. The pace it moves, kind of like an Agatha Christie style murder. And then the ending, when you find out it's the kind of nuts guy, the makeup he's in, which to be fair, he is nuts, so it kind of makes sense that he thinks he's a robot or wants to be a robot. The bit with the one guy who has the fear, robophobia or whatever, that kind of comes out of nowhere, even though he's not really the guy he's pretending. It's a little convoluted, actually. This story is way more convoluted in spots than it needs to be. Some of that does not need to be in here. What works for this episode and makes it iconic is the design choices. I love the design choices. This is one of those occasions where I think the story is naffed, but the execution of the story is good. Maybe calling the story naffed is a bit much. I think the story is basic and plods along, but the execution of the story is good. First off, the robot design is some of the most iconic in all of Doctor Who, modern or classic. It is if you talk to me about robots in Doctor Who, I'm either going to think of the robot from Robots just because I love that story, or I'm going to think of the robots from Robots of Death because that's such an iconic outfit, costume design for the robots, and it's aged so well it holds up even today. And then the costume designs for the guest characters, because it's odd that they are working in what's basically a mining operation, but they don't look like that. They look more like they're on a luxury cruise. They look like they're dressed for comfort and pleasure, not work uniforms like, say, on the Nostromo from Alien, to where they're probably going to have, they're going to probably get much more happiness from their job because they can dress the way they like, and they're on what's basically a luxury cruise. And that brings me to the other point, is the set design. It's not built like an industrial ship, like, again, say, the Nostromo from Alien. It looks more like you're on a luxury cruise, like the Titanic or something. It looks like you paid to go on this little vacation instead of being at a job where you're drilling. And to me, I think that's going to give you more job satisfaction if you're a worker. So I really enjoy that. Those elements make this story stand out and is why it ranks so high, not the actual story itself, which, to be honest, I don't really care for. Definitely one of the most overrated stories in classic Doctor Who, right up there with Deadly Assassin, both of which are from the same season. Next on the list is The Androids of Tara. I like this one. I get a little irked by it with the whole Romana gets captured, she gets free, she gets captured, she gets free. I feel like Romana is not done. She once again kind of becomes that damsel in distress companion, and I can understand that's why Mary Tam left the role after only one season. She felt she couldn't take it anywhere else. She's great here. She's playing 4 different characters here. She's playing Romana, she's playing the princess, she's playing the robot pretending to be Romana, and the robot pretending to be the princess. And she's doing a good job with all of them. I love her outfit. That purple outfit she wears I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the guest cast, again, are fine in this. The location work is good in this. The guy playing the main antagonist, who is also in Macroterra, is good. I really like him. I love the bit when Tom's like, would you mind not standing on my chest? My hat's on fire. I love that. I love that. And then when the guy cuts his scarf and he's like, Tom's like, I'm going to have to do something bad to you if you keep messing with my scarf. I do like the one sword guy he kind of reminds me of Duggan, but Duggan with a sword. When he keeps just easily going for the sword. So when K9 zaps his arm, it's kind of funny. I do kind of like him. He's a little two-dimensional, but I like him. I don't know, it's kind of a basic story, although I do like the fact the swords have the kind of electric spark, and they have kind of the electric crossbows. It's like medieval times, but with a technological bent, which is interesting. It's a fun enough story, just not one that I find super memorable. Next on the list is the Saran Experiment. Season 12 entering the list for the first time. I like Saran Experiment. It's a 2-parter that realizes it only needs to be a 2-parter. It doesn't need to be a 4-parter. It's a great 2-parter. It's all shot on location, although frustratingly it was shot one of the rare times when they used the outside cameras back then to do it. Imagine if it had been shot all on film, how glorious it would look, if the film element survived. But it still looks good for what it is. I really like Steyer, or whatever his name is in this one. I think it's the same actor who played Lynx. He's really good. He's probably the best actor to play a Centaur, and he's really, really good as Steyer or Stahl or whichever one it is in this one. He's really good in that. The fight scene at the end is a little rough, but that's because Tom Baker was injured. You can tell in some shots in close-ups where he's trying to hide his left arm. He had broken his collarbone, and of course his stunt double, which was probably Terry, was having to film a lot of the scenes. So it's a little rough, but it works. I enjoy it for what it is. I do think it's a good episode. Just not anything necessarily to write home about. Easily the weakest of season 12. Next on the list is the Stones of Blood. I do like this one. I tend to prefer the stuff going on the hyperspace craft over the stuff going on Earth. And I know I am in the minority on that. People are usually the other way around. I like the first half of the story better. I like the second half of the story better. The Ogre are cool ideas. I mean, basically, not Stonehenge, but basically Stonehenge, let's be honest. Some of the boulders being alive and loving plasma and blood to live. The scene when it kills the campers is... that's a heck of a well-done scene. The one guy who leads the cult is overacting a bit. He kind of bothers me. Like, yeah, the whole bit when he's about to sacrifice the doctor and runs away. I don't know. I don't quite buy him. The actor's kind of hamming it up. The actress playing the older woman, the one that's an ally of the doctor, is great. I really like her in the story. She's one of my favorite parts of the story. It's an interesting cliffhanger when Romana gets pushed off the cliff and she thinks the doctor did it because whatever it was somehow took the guise of the doctor, even though that never happens in the story again. It's a little weird. The book does a better job of explaining that. The way it's written in the book makes that work a little better because I have read the novelization of the story and it works a little better in the novelization, where it's a little clunky in the story itself. The special effects look good. I think the lady playing Miss LaFay is great. She does a really good job in it. I love the the adjudicator's design, the little mechanical, almost like beings. I love their special effect design because they're totally not humanoid at all. I think that effect works well for them. They are very, very alien. I like that. And I love the bit when the Doctor's trying to defend himself and he puts on the little wig. I don't know why, but I love that. It's such a Fourth Doctor thing to do with the wig. And just watching him give his arguments for why he shouldn't be killed. I like that part of the story better. But it's still a good watch. Next on the list is the Mask of Mandragora. I enjoy this one, I think, more so than most. I think its biggest downfall is just the fact the story resolves too quickly. It seems a little too easy. Like the guy is shocking Tom when he's wearing the chest plate to kind of absorb it. And you figure at some point all the other guy would do would be like, I'll just shock him in the head instead. But he just keeps shooting him in the chest. It feels like it resolves a little too easy. Although I do love the bit when Tom's just like, I would not say no to a salami sandwich. And then when it cuts to them leaving, he is holding a salami. Like he's got a salami over his shoulder. I like that. I don't know why it's a little thing, but I love it. I like the cast in it. The guy playing the Count is really great. And the guy playing the Prince is also great. The guy playing the Prince's friend is good. The guy playing the Seer is okay. I don't really like the makeup they have on him, but his actual performance is okay. Maybe a little over the top, but not in a bad way. I think that's done well. I love some of the humor in it. You can't count. That's one of my favorite Tom Baker lines. You can't count. It's a very Fourth Doctor thing to say. I love the location work. You keep expecting Patrick McGoohan to show up. Really good location work. The sets look good, like when they're in the catacombs and stuff. It's another one where Sarah Jane gets not only drugged and almost sacrificed, but also hypnotized, which got a little tropey with her. I mean, the same thing would happen in the next story, her last story, Hand of Fear, with her getting hypnotized or taken over. So that's a little frustrating that she gets drugged, almost sacrificed, and hypnotized all in one story. There are just times Sarah was not utilized well, and this is one of them. But I also like the mask that they wear, like the Mask of Mandragora mask is a really cool design. I love the concept of the Mandragora itself in the helix. The special effect of the helix looked really pretty cool. The way they realized it on the screen looked pretty cool. And then the new TARDIS interior was introduced, sadly only used for this season. But it's one of my favorite TARDIS interiors, so I love the little bit with it at the beginning. It's a good story. It's an underrated story. And next on the list is Terror of the Altons. This is a good one. The introduction of the greatest of the masters, Raja Delgado. And that first scene with Delgado is just perfect. Lightning in a bottle, perfect. It introduces him perfectly. With him talking to the guy who runs the circus. Everything you need to know about Delgado, you really get out of that scene. And just how he hypnotizes him, turns around, and just... I love that. I absolutely love that. That is a man of confidence. I love him throughout the whole story, too. It's really good. The Altons, while not quite as effective as Spearhead, because they are having to share the limelight, are still great in this. We have that great cliffhanger with Terry Walsh playing the Alton that gets his face ripped off to show it's an Alton. That's a good cliffhanger. A great introduction to Joe as well. And of course, I always love when Pertwee and Delgado are on screen together. It's easy to tell they were friends in real life. They have such good chemistry together. Again, I'm kind of surprised this one isn't higher. There's just so many good stories in the 70s. I mean, we're already into what I call really good stories. I really like this one a lot. And this is just kind of where it lands. I really like the updated effects for it. This one's interesting because it doesn't go for flair like some of the others. Most of the updated effects on the box set are cleaning up stuff. Just making the story look the way your memory of it looked. Cleaning up some of the bad CSO, for example, because there is a lot of really rough CSO in this. So cleaning up the fringing, making the backgrounds look better, making it have a more natural look to it. That's most of the upgraded effects right there. Making the killer doll look more convincing and less like somebody in a suit when it's moving around and more like a plastic doll coming to life. To me, that's just part of cleanup. Really, the only major upgraded effect, aside that I don't consider just cleanup, is when the Nestine is starting to materialize at the end, and I know some people don't like that. I do. I mean, I'm fine with the original shot. It does make it fit in a little more with Spearhead there. I think it's a great looking shot. But other than that, it's mostly cleanup. This is one of those, if for some reason you're a fan of the show and you don't like updated effects, this is one that you'll probably like, except for that one shot of the Nestine materializing, which is fine. You can watch episode 4 with them turned off. Because it really does just make the story look the way your memory of it would be, with it looking much improved. Next on the list is the Android Invasion, the first appearance of the legendary Season 13 on the list. I do consider Android Invasion to be the weakest Season 13 story, but it is a great story. It is great. Not just good, great. I really enjoy this one. It has a very Invasion of the Body Snatchers feel to it, but with its own twist with it being robots. I don't really care for the actual villains in it. I forget what the name, the Crawls or whatever their name are. I don't really care for their design. They don't do much for me. And that whole bit with the eye patches, hey, doesn't really make sense. We just kind of ignore that. It's great having Benton back and Harry back, although I wish they'd had a slightly better send-off. Last time we see real Benton, he's knocked unconscious. I would have liked to have seen him at the end, but it's great having them back. I love trying to figure out what's going on at first. You're in the village. Nobody's there. Things are looking weird, like the dates being the same, the coins being all new. Then you see the people acting all weird. I like the slow burn of it. Then seeing the robotic Sarah, and then seeing the robotic doctor. I like the bit when he realizes it's not Sarah, that's not real trees, that's not real grass, and you're not the real Sarah. I knew it at once. I love that. I like when Sarah meets the fake doctor, and we know it's the fake doctor by the way they do the camera shot. When it pans over to that close-up of the doctor, and he just looks evil. The way, the expression Tom does combined with the camera angle, you just know that's not the doctor. It's a really well done shot. The plan to stop them all at the end where they all freeze in place is a little awkward, but I like it. The book does it a little better. I've read the book. The book does that a little better. I do love the scene when the doctor just brazenly walks in and pretends to be the robot. Benton, what are you doing? Keep an eye out for him, and walks on. And then the robot does it a few minutes later, and so Benton shoots it, and he's like, satisfied. I love that. The biggest elephant in the room we have to address is the lack of the Brigadier. The Brigadier needed to be in this story. I get Nicholas Courtney wasn't available. That's not their fault. But it is a little odd not having the Brigadier in this story. It does hurt it a little bit, in my opinion. But it is definitely a good one. It's definitely one everyone should see. Every Season 13 story is one everyone should see. It's the best Doctor Who season ever made. Next on the list, sticking with Season 13, is Terror of the Zygons, which some people would call a masterpiece. I don't go quite that far, but it is really, really good. We're already into stories that are really good. Terror of the Zygons is good. I don't really think it needs updated effects like some people do. I actually like the effect of the Loch Ness Monster. I think it's very convincing. I like the Zygon design. I like the inside of their spaceship design, which to me is a big step up above the Claws of Axon design. I love the shape-shifting ability. I love the fact they have to keep the people they are turning into alive to make that work. I hate the fact in Modern Who kind of ruined that, because Modern Who does that kind of thing. I like the fact they had to keep people alive to kind of refresh the image, so to speak. I just really enjoy that one. And of course, it's great having the Brigadier and Benton and the crew back for one last story, at least until the invasion the following season. The invasion later this season. We're still in Season 13, so it's great to have the Brigadier back, I should say, for one last time, all the way up until Maldron Undead. We have about an 8-year gap without the Brigadier there, don't we? Something like that, 7 or 8 years, because this is the last time we see the Brigadier all the way up until Maldron Undead, when he's retired, because he's not in Android Invasion. That's right. A good story. Next on the list, and we had to get here eventually, is the Daemons. I know a lot of you would have the Daemons higher, but to be fair, I probably have it higher than you thought I would. The Daemons, oddly enough, was kind of the bell curve of this list. I was literally comparing stories to the Daemons. Like, okay, do I like this story more or less than I like the Daemons? Less, okay, it has to go below this. Do I like this story more or less than I like the Daemons? Okay, it has to go above it. A lot of this list came down to, do I like it better or worse than the Daemons, to know kind of where to put it. So the Daemons was actually a big help with this list, because the Daemons is an overrated story. It's really good. That's why it's this high. It's a good story, and it does a lot of things I love. It's kind of the most Pertwee story to ever Pertwee, if you think about it. It's got all of the Pertwee staples. Beautiful location work, I might add. Filming at that town, beautiful location work. It's a great story with the unit. Benton gets a lot to do, and I love Benton. Benton is awesome. Benton's probably my favorite, member of unit, besides maybe the Brigadier. I love Benton. Everybody likes Benton. I mean, do you know any Doctor Who fan that doesn't like Benton? Benton is just awesome. And he gets stuff to do. I love when Benton gets stuff to do. Yates gets some stuff to do. Not a big Yates fan, but he gets stuff to do. Joe is very annoying in this episode, but that's another story. The Master is great in this episode, as Roger always is. The Brigadier is good when we get him. The actual story is pretty good, except for the ending. The ending is what really kind of lets it down for me. First off, the realization of the main demon at the end, Azrael or whatever his name is highly disappointing. It just looks like an out-of-shape guy in a mask. And it's voice set, and it's Stephen Thorne. I'm sure it's Stephen Thorne in the makeup too. But it's Stephen Thorne, which, as I mentioned before, I automatically hear Omega. So when he's talking, I'm just like, oh, that's Omega, and I'm pulled out of the story. Same problem I had with Hand of Fear, which is one of the reasons why it was ranked so low. So, and then the whole bit where it's Deus Machina, how easy he's defeated. He's supposed to be this powerful demon god who can destroy the earth, but he's beaten just because Joe stands in the way, and it causes a feedback loop, and it can't understand love. It's the exact same ending from Closing Time. We beat him with love, Alfie. We beat him with love. It's the exact same ending. You can't like the Daemons and hate Closing Time, because it's the same ending. The same. So it's utterly ridiculous, although it's very convincing, that model church blowing up. I can see why people thought they blew up a church for real at the time. It's a very convincing shot. But yeah, the ending, it just hurts it for me. And again, if you don't stick the landing, it can seriously hurt someone's opinion of the story. That's the same problem Hand of Fear had. And that's the same problem the Daemons has. I think it's a good story, but the ending is just a bit naffed. I had one or two other issues in it too. Like the reporter at the beginning was very annoying. Which I get, he's supposed to be annoying, that's part of the point. But it's still very annoying. I loved the Professor, and the Professor just not having any of it from him. I missed the Professor. I was upset when he died. I liked him. So that's where the Daemons falls. Next on the list is Colony in Space. Yes, you know I like Colony in Space better than the Daemons. And there are another two I tend to think of with each other. They are consecutive stories. But also, I get highly annoyed that the Daemons always gets all this praise while Colony gets all this criticism. That bugs me. So when I think of one, I tend to think of the other. I like Colony in Space. I think it's paced well. I like the fact that half the story doesn't even get going until about halfway through the story. Because the first 3 episodes are mainly about the fights between the colonists and the miners. And of course, trying to solve the murder mystery of what's going on with the colonists dying. It's really in episode 4, halfway through the story, when the Master shows up, and then you start finding out about what's going on in the Forbidden City, and then going to the Forbidden City, and all of that really comes into play there. So there's actually there's a couple different plots going on in this, which are executed pretty well. The city stuff, I'll be honest, doesn't really work for me, but it gives us that great speech where the Master actually offers the Doctor the opportunity to rule the universe with him. And to me, I think that shows that even Delgado's master still cares about his old friend, at least to some degree. Because he didn't have to do that. The fact that he's like, I'm offering you a stake in half the universe. It's almost like he wants them to be on the same side. But that's the only way he can do that. That's the only way he can make them be friends like they did. At least that's how I interpret it. And then the Doctor, of course, being, I don't want to control the universe. I just want to see it, to explore it, which is one of the most Doctor things ever said. And that, there's just no way they're ever going to be able to cross that gap between them now, because they just have very different ideologies. So the story always gets a couple points for that scene between them at the end. I love that scene a lot. I like the guest cast a lot. The guy playing the captain of the miners is good. The guy playing the second in command is also good, but I always dock points because I know that role was originally supposed to be a woman, but they ended up changing that. Although the actress they originally cast, I think, still got paid. But they ended up changing it because apparently the people at the time, well, nobody will believe a woman could be like sadistic like that. I'm sitting here going, I'd have believed it. Trust me. I would have had no problems believing it. I would have believed it. So I wish they went with that original casting, and I always dock points because they didn't. Because I think that would have been actually really ahead of its time to have done that back then. And I like the people playing the colonist. Of course, I really like the head colonist, Ash, who was also in the Aztecs. He's really, really good in it. Even though most of it looks like it's filmed in a quarry, I think the location filming is good. I like Colony in Space. It's an underrated story. Plus, it's the first time we really get to see the Third Doctor off-world doing, non-Earth stuff. So he gets points for that, too. Next on the list is Invasion of the Dinosaurs. A great story, let down by some not-so-great effects. To be fair, some of the effects aren't that bad. It's mostly the T-Rex effects that bug me, because that does not look like a T-Rex at all. But when you see, the Brontosaurus or the Stegosaurus, that's not really a bother to me. It's fine. But the T-Rex stuff's kind of oof. But the story is good. I like a story like this. It's also got Peter Miles, is that his name? The guy who played Niter. It's got him back in it. As I mentioned before, I really like him, so I'm happy to see him. Yates, everything going on with Yates is so unexpected because, again, he's one of the good guys. He's a regular character at this point, so for his betrayal to occur is shocking, especially probably for back then when you didn't have those kind of twists of one of the good guys turning. And then how it ties in with keeping in mind this is the first time we've seen him since the Green Death, when he basically had his brain scrambled and got brainwashed. So maybe it was when he was away, when he was recovering from that on vacation, where he fell into all this. So I wonder if his brains hadn't been scrambled, if he would have been convinced into it. But maybe because of what he went through in the Green Death, he was more susceptible to what they were telling him. At least in my headcanon, that's how I picture that. Luckily, he got to redeem himself in Planet of the Spiders. I enjoyed the story. The stuff with the spaceship's kind of weird. The fact that anyone would be gullible enough to believe that, but it's the 70s or the 80s, so who knows? I thought that part was kind of odd, especially since they didn't think to do anything about the cut on Sarah's forehead. That's a little odd. Like I said, there's some little flaws there, but it's a really good story. And I absolutely love when John's getting his mugshot taken and he does that smile when he's like, that's funny to me. And I like the slow build of it until the cliffhanger of episode 1, when you don't realize it's dinosaurs. You don't know what's going on. It's another situation of the whole town's abandoned. Where is everybody? What is going on? That slow build until you get the cliffhanger at the end, and they're like, that's pretty cool. Next on the list, sticking with season 11, is Planet of the Spiders. And I'm going to be honest, these two could flip-flop. Invasion of the Dinosaurs and Planet of the Spiders could flip-flop. They're about a tie. That's why I knew I had to put them next to each other, because it was really hard for me to pick which one went where. Planet of the Spiders is fine. It's not bad. It's a little long. I would have preferred it as a regular story and not necessarily his final, although it wouldn't have worked, I think, as a regular story. I really kind of wish Pertwee went out on a better story, but it's fine. I do enjoy the scene with the long chase between land, sea, and air, because it's like they did that just for John, And so I know it might look a little silly and drawn out, but the fact that it feels like they threw that in there just for John, it gets a full pass because I'm sure John loved doing it. The bit with these spiders is cool. Spiders are one of those things that people have a natural fear of, so I can see you wanting to play on that. The effect of the spiders themselves look a little naff, but not bad. I mean, it's easily not the worst Classic Who effect. They're a little naff, but they're all right. They're fine. I would love Planet of the Spiders to get some updated effects, just like I would Invasion of the Dinosaurs. But if it doesn't, it's fine. Sarah feels a little dense in this, like she lets one take her over because she believes when it's like, oh, I'll help, or whatever it is. The fact she let it do it, Sarah's not written the best in this episode. I feel like Sarah would be smarter than that. The actual final scene of him confronting the Great One is good. I really like that scene. I like the regeneration scene as well. And I like the fact, again, Mike gets a little redemption here. I don't remember all of it. The whole bit about the spiders getting on everyone's backs and possessing them was a little weird. But it's a little out there, this one. It's a mixed bag, but I like it. And it's, as a regeneration episode, I guess it's fine. Next on the list is Image of the Findal. This one, I think, if I had seen it recently, would be higher. But I have not seen it in a long time. I actually have it on the wish list, since we don't know when we're getting season 15. But it's one of the ones, like, right toward the top of the wish list. Because I do want to rewatch Image of the Findal. Because I remember liking it, but I've only seen it once or twice. I can never remember if it's once or twice. But I liked it. The nighttime location work looks really good. The glowing skull is good. The story is creepy and atmospheric. Very much a Hinchcliffe feel into it. You can tell Bob Holmes is still involved in it. Really, the only thing letting it down is the final form of the Findal creature, which I've talked about many times on this channel, which just looks ridiculously silly. With the gold paint, the eyes, and the creature in the back. And I could forgive all of it if it wasn't those eyes. I never like when Classic Who does the painted on eyes. The Keeper of Traken has the same problem. It just looks ridiculous and pulls me out of the story. So when I see the Findal creature, I don't see this creature I'm supposed to be scared of that can destroy the planet. I feel like I'm at a circus watching a circus act with those painted on eyes and the green and the gold paint. The creature behind it could use some updating too. Really, what they need to do with Image of the Findal is do like Kenda and Snake Dance and just upgrade the effects of the Findal creature at the end. Like with Kenda and Snake Dance, how they just did some CGI work to make the snake look better. They need to do that with the Findal creature. Make the gold look creepier, give it some real demon-like eyes, and make the thing behind it look like a terrifying monster. An Image of the Findal will skyrocket up this list, I'm pretty sure. Next on the list is Horns of Nimon. I like Horns of Nimon. I know it's objectively terrible. There's no budget put in it. And it's a competition for trying to be the most hammy on it. And Soldeed is indeed winning. But I love it. I love it. Horns of Nimon is one of those stories. Once you get what it is, and the fact it's just absurd, pantomime, silly camp nonsense, it's so much fun and you can have a ball with it. The first time I watched Horns of Nimon, I thought it was god-awful. I don't know why I ever watched it a second time. Maybe I was just bored and I didn't have as much Doctor Who at the time. But over multiple viewings, I've come to love it. It's so silly. It's one of those when you're just in the mood for campy, silly season 17, stereotypical season 17, camp, silly fun, put on Horns of Nimon. It's hilarious. My dreams of conquest. You're all doomed. Doomed. How can you not love Soldeed? He's so much fun. How many Nimon have you seen today? 3. I've seen 3. I love him. Although he's actually pretty creepy in that one scene when he's interrogating the surviving pilot. Oh, you wouldn't know how to repair those engines if your life depended on it. You altered your course, didn't you? Didn't you? He's actually pretty creepy in that scene. I can see why the pilot's scared. I love that kind of flip of the switch there. Of course, right after that, he flips the switch back and goes back to being so indeed. The Nymon outfits look god-awful. Oh, they're terrible. It's very obviously a guy in a suit. It's so laughably bad. The set designs are atrocious. The special effects are atrocious. Now, Cunning Monkey has done some really good special effects for this story on his YouTube channel. And you should watch that if you ever get a chance. I would actually love watching the full version of the story with his upgraded effects, because those are really, really good. But the only one that seems to be taking it seriously is Lala Ward. And I love the scene when she's talking to Soldeed, taking it seriously, and he's Soldeeding all over the place. It's so much fun. And I can't rank a story any lower when it's that much fun. And I get so much enjoyment out of it every time I rewatch it. It's just a ball. You can tell by how excited I get just talking about it. Love Horns of Nymon. Next on the list is The Brain of Morbius, season 13 again, and it's obviously their take on Frankenstein. We learn about a Time Lord, perhaps even more deadly than the Master with Morbius, so deadly that the Time Lords actually intervened and got rid of him, and my goodness would I love to see Morbius come back if it was done right. The realization of Morbius at the end is a mixed bag. I don't really care for the plastic-looking thing with the tube eyes, and the human arm looks out of place. I mean, it needs to be there for a narrative point for the story, but it still looks out of place in the rest of the arm. The rest of the outfit I like the claw arm and the body, I think look pretty good. I enjoy the setting. The set design looks good when they're on the landscape of the planet on Khan, and then the interior of the Doctor's house. It's always good to see him back, by the way. I love anytime the guy playing the scientist. I love anytime he shows up in Doctor Who. He's also in the Cushing Invasion of Earth movie. He's good. The Sisterhood of Khan, I'm never really keen on. They kind of let the story down for me. I've never liked the Sisterhood of Khan that much. I don't know why. I just don't get into them. It's the reason why the story doesn't rank any higher. They just don't do much for me. But I love the Doctor and Sarah in this and their banter. And of course, they're putting in a good performance. So it's a fun, nice little scary combination of writing from Terrence Dicks and Bob Holmes. And I love when they work together. So that it's good. Next on the list is The Sunmakers. Robert Holmes complaining about his tax man. I love The Sunmakers. I do. It is great satire. I get some of the younger generation might not be familiar with satire. And to be fair, the way the world is these days, it's probably hard to do satire when it seems like we're living it. But this story's done well, especially since it does feel like one that's done on a very limited budget. I still think the sets look pretty good considering they do look low budget. I enjoy the story. I love K9 getting stuff to do. I love a lot of the humor. The taxes. I can't pay the taxes. Well, you just need a wily accountant. And the bit about taxes like, being burned at the stake or whatever. Well, yes, but taxes are more painful. So Tom gets some nice, quippy, humorous lines in it. It is done a little humorously campy at times, like when they throw the guy off the building. I think that's done a little better in the novelization, but I still love the scene. I like the fact that they make the guy who plays the actual Weasley guy, I like how they do him up to be this kind of Weasley businessman. I think that's very meta, that they're basically calling tax people nothing better than primordial slime. At least that's how I read it, and to be Weasley, and I get that. I see what Bob Holmes was doing. This one's a lot of fun. I really, really enjoy The Sunmakers. Next on the list is The Armageddon Factor, the end of the Key to Time. I like this one. I would love for this story to get some updated effects. It could use some updated effects, but I actually like this one. Yeah, the Shadow character's hamming it up a bit. He is hamming it up a bit. And then I like how the one guy who's kind of like the second in command, who's one of the good characters, how anytime he aims his gun, it's like this. He just kind of, it's this weird pose he takes. And then when he gets shot the one time, he just, and then falls back into it. It's a little silly. It's a little silly. The sets vary. Some of the sets look good. Some of the sets don't. Like inside the computer control room looks a little naff. So they're kind of back and forth. I think Lala is putting in a great performance as Astra. The reveal of her being a segment, I think it's a pretty cool reveal because I don't think anyone was expecting that. K9 being reprogrammed was neat. Drax, I don't really care for Drax. I mean, I don't hate Drax, but I don't really care for Drax. That thick accent drives me bonkers. But overall, I like it. And I love the confrontation at the end. One, when the Doctor's talking to Romana, I can do anything because I have the key to time. I actually love the way Tom plays that. I know some people wish he played it more sinister, including the director, and that the novelization plays it more sinister, like maybe the Fourth Doctor was actually considering it. But I don't agree with that because the Fourth Doctor would never do that. People call the Fourth Doctor dark. I don't ever call the Fourth Doctor dark. He can be serious when he needed to be, but I'll never call him dark. I think Tom played it perfectly because there's nobody on the planet, nobody that understands the Fourth Doctor better than Tom Baker. Tom Baker is the definitive source for the Fourth Doctor. The only person I'd say even came close was Douglas Adams, who also got the Fourth Doctor very well. And I feel like Tom plays this perfectly, especially since he's keeping the children in mind. It's a well-known fact, Tom's a huge fan of the children of the show. That's one of the reasons he loved the job. He loved being a hero and a good guy to children. So he wouldn't want the Doctor to be played dark like that. So I think the way he plays that part, one, is very in character for the Fourth Doctor, and two, is the best way for that part to have been played. I will always side with Tom on that over the director. And then his confrontation with the Black Guardian at the end is really, really good. So I enjoy their Armageddon factor, I think, more than most. Next on the list is The Face of Evil. This is such a good one. It's an underrated story, and probably my second favorite story of season 14. I prefer it over Deadly Assassin and The Mask of Mandragora and The Robots of Death even. It's a great introduction to Leela. I actually really like the jungle forest set design. It looks really good. I love the Doctor's humor in it, his lines, the bit when he's like, well, the evil one. Well, I forget what he says there, but it's great. The bit when the arrow strikes next to him, he's like, that's either a really good shot or a really bad one. His bit with the deli jelly baby. And then he eats it, and he's like, no one tells me what. He gets a lot of really good lines in this one. The reveal at the end of part 1 is a good cliffhanger with his face being on the cliff. The actual model shot of the face on the cliff is a bit, I mean, it's fine, but it's not great. It's obviously a model shot. It's not overly impressive, but it gets the job done well enough. I don't really care for the people who live inside the mountain, the kind of brainy people, their outfits and costume design, I don't care for at all. I don't know why, I just don't. But the special effects used for Zoanna is great, how it looks like Tom. That's a pretty impressive effect for the 70s. I think it holds up pretty well too, the little holographic image of the Doctor it does. And then the actual story, another example of the Doctor inadvertently causing the problem because he had been there before trying to help. This is something that comes up a lot with the Doctor, especially in Modern Who, of him trying to do the right thing and creating problems for himself later. And then him having to fix it. I actually think that's pretty neat. And then I just love Leela as a character and how she can use the Janus Thorns without hesitation. And he's like, no more, ever. There's so many good things going on in The Face of Evil. Plus, that's the one where he gives that speech about the incredibly powerful and the incredibly stupid have, one thing in common. They don't alter their views to fit the facts. They alter the facts to fit their views, which can be really bothersome if you're one of the facts that needs altering. I love that line. I've always loved that, and it's so real in 2023. So it definitely gets points for that too. Next on the list is Shada. I love Shada a lot, but I am burned out on Shada. I have seen Shada 6 or 7 times. Because I watched it several times when it first came out. I own the DVD, I own the Blu-ray, I own the Steelbook, which was actually given to me by one of my patrons, JLBWHO, which I very much appreciate. And then I also, of course, have the season 17 box set, which I consider the definitive version. I do like being able to watch it in episodic form. But I've only watched it once in episodic form because I'd seen it like 5 times before that. I like Shada. It's a great story. The animation is top notch. And the switch from live action to animation is never jarring, especially since it happens quite a bit in the story when it's going back and forth. It never feels out of place or jarring. It feels like smooth transitions. I really like that. I think the only reason it's ranked this low is just my fatigue from it. I've watched it so much, I'm just burned out. I probably won't watch Shada again for a really long time, just because I've seen it so many times. So I have Shada fatigue. But it is a good story with some clever dialogue. Again, Douglas Adams, a great villain, a great plan. I actually like the villain's plan in the story. That's a unique, impressive idea. I love the guy playing the professor, always offering people some tea. I love that guy. They could have done a spin-off series just about the professor at Cambridge being all senile and everything. I would have watched that. Just running around offering tea. Now every time I watch The Keeper of Traken and the Keeper shows up, I'm just like, why is he not offering me tea? Because it's the same actor. He needs to be offering me tea. Also, he looks a lot like Patrick Troughton. Like an aged Patrick Troughton. But yeah, Shada's great. And I love... just some of Tom's dialogue is so good. Next on the list is the legendary Green Death, the one with the maggots. And the Green Death is phenomenal. I think it's great at 6 parts. I don't mind the omnibus version either, but I think it's fine at 6 parts. I don't really find it overly padded. It has one of the best companion departures in all of Doctor Who. And Pertwee says in 0 words at the end what's like Tennant couldn't say in 1,000. And I love David Tennant as an actor, and I like the 10th Doctor. But I still feel like Rose's departure, with all the things he says in Rose's departure, never quite, and what all the stuff he says in his own departure and End of Time, none of that measures up to Joe's exit here when the Doctor says nothing. You can tell by the way it's shot and the look on his face and how he just leaves and drives off. That's a heck of a way, not only to end this massive story, but to end a whole season with him just driving away as the sun's going down. That is a heck of a way to end the season. The story itself is really good. We have some really good effects and some really bad effects. The maggots look great. I absolutely love. I think that's one of the reasons this story sticks in people's minds, is the maggots look so good, so convincing. Now, the flying one at the end is napped. Let's just be honest, it's napped. It looks silly. And then there's some scenes with some dodgy CSO, like when Sergeant Benton's throwing the stuff out to kill them and they're driving. Some of the CSO looks a bit wonky. Everything going on with the guy playing Stevens is really good. I really like the guy playing Stevens. Also, the guy playing the guy in the glasses who like leaves like halfway through the story, because I believe the actor actually had appendicitis. He's also really good. The scene when they're going across with the boat with the maggots everywhere, I mean, it's obviously CSO, but it looks really creepy and really good. I like Cliff Jones. Stuart Bevan did a great job playing him, who, of course, was Katie Manning's boyfriend at the time in real life. I really liked him in the role. The Brigadier gets some fun stuff to do. We see Yates having to go through all the stuff he's going through. We get to see John disguised as a cleaning lady, which is absolutely hilarious. I love the fact Mike Yates just finds it funny. I like your handbag. Oh, do you? I love it. It has some nice humorous bits in it. And watching Jo kind of grow up and come into her own is also really, really nice. It's a good story. A lot of good things going on in The Green Death. Next on the list, and probably lower than most people would think, including myself, is Spearhead from Space. I like Spearhead from Space. It has so much it has to do, and it does it well. It introduces a whole new era of Doctor Who, gets you used to what this era is going to be like. We got an invasion story. We have a new Doctor. The show is now in color, and since it was shot entirely on film, glorious color. The Blu-ray release of this story is fantastic. Actually, I have gotten 2 copies of that. I know Ian sent me one of them, and I forget who sent the other one. It might have been it's probably either Lance or Simon sent the other one, but I actually have 2 copies of that. Both of them sent them right around the same time. But I appreciate both of you. Because I had never gotten to see it. I only own the DVD copy. But it looks glorious on Blu-ray, like a James Bond movie from the 60s. We get reintroduced to the Brigadier, who is now a main character, and I absolutely love him in this story. We get introduced to Liz, and I love Liz. I love when the Doctor has a brainy companion that can kind of keep up with him. Plus, Carolyn John is just great in the role. She is so snarky. I mean, my favorite story with her, how she's portrayed, is in this one. I just love how well she's written in this story. I will never get over that line of, "Oh, it's not a police box, it's a spaceship." I love the sass. And like when she's trying to work with the Brigadier and he won't go away, and she's like, I love when she steals the key. I just love everything Liz is doing in this story. I wish I had more of Liz, especially of this Liz. I love how well she's written in this story and how well Carolyn is playing her in this story. I love the Altons. They are a fantastic idea, and they're used really well, not only in the wonderful scene when they all come to life and start attacking everybody, but how they can make the Altons that look human like they do with the General. That's really neat. The guy who's kind of the head guy, who does look mostly human, but you can tell isn't, that guy deserves a freaking BAFTA. His performance as the wax figure that, again, looks almost human is really good, because even though it's obviously in real life a human playing him, he still doesn't to where there's something off about him where you can tell he's not human. He has this, like, I don't know if it's just me or if it's true, but it looks like he never blinks. He never seems to blink. He has this intense stare, like he's looking through you almost, or that he's taking everything in almost like the Terminator. There's just something unnatural about the way he looks that is just perfect. You know something is up with him. Like even when I had watched the story and I couldn't remember if he was human or not, I figured out really quickly that dude's not human. And that's down to the actor just putting in such a good performance. And the location work looks great. It's nice having nothing studio bound, so nothing looks like a studio set. It really gives a gravitas to this story. Why is it ranked this low? The bit at the end with the nesting tentacles is a little silly. I wish the Doctor was on his feet a little sooner. He's not in bed overly long. The cliffhanger when he's rolling around in the wheelchair to me is a little silly. Also, just in general, I don't go back and rewatch this one. There's just other stories I prefer to rewatch. It's good. I just, Spearhead's one of those ones I have to be in the mood to rewatch. It's not one I'm like, I want to go rewatch Spearhead. I just don't go back to it as much as I do the ones we'll talk about further on this. And that's why it's surprisingly this low, despite being a great story and essential Doctor Who. Next on the list, and boy, coming after the last one, this one's going to get me in trouble, is Death to the Daleks. Yes, I have Death to the Daleks above Spearhead in space. I know you're picking up the torches and the pitchforks. I just know. But I like Death to the Daleks. Death to the Daleks is one I do like to go back and rewatch a lot. Again, the Doctor is off-world. We don't get a lot of the third Doctor off-world. I love the scene when he goes to fight Sarah Jane. I've talked about this before, about that scene when he sees Sarah about to get killed, sacrificed. Again, Sarah almost gets sacrificed way too much. Drugged and sacrificed. And he just immediately goes, hi! And full flying tackles all of them. I love that, because there's no way he's going to be able to beat all of them. But the fact he doesn't even hesitate, he immediately knocks down the two by him and flying tackles the rest. I love him for that, especially since he doesn't even know Sarah much at this point, but I'll always love that he immediately did that. Yeah, the cliffhanger with the checkered floor is terrible. I'll give you that. The little maze trap seems way easier to solve than it should to keep people there till they age to death. I mean, eventually you can get through a maze through trial and error, but willing suspension of disbelief. I like the colonist, especially the one colonist who's not necessarily the best guy, but does the right thing at the end. I do like him. I like the Dalek designs in this one, because they're not traditional Dalek designs. Like I like seeing like the black ones and stuff. I like that design. I love that they get projectile weapons. I absolutely love they get the projectile weapons. And of course, you know I love the scene when they test the projectile weapon on a miniature TARDIS. They just happen to have a miniature TARDIS. They have so much hatred for the Doctor, they have a miniature TARDIS to target practice on. Of course, you guys know my fan theory about why there's a miniature TARDIS there. And we all know that's Frank's TARDIS. Frank the Dalek. You've heard me talk about Frank. That's probably another reason I absolutely love the story. I love my Frank the Dalek fan theory, who of course we know is the #1 Doctor fan. He loves the Doctor, big Doctor fanboy. But I love the projectile weapons. I do enjoy that a lot. And the Dalek voices in this one I'm not too keen on. I know it's Michael Wisher doing them. But I like his Davros better than his Dalek voices. They feel a little panicked at times. Fire, 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 get them fire! Little much there. And then immediately when the guns don't work, they're like, yes, we should form an alliance. And everyone's like, they won't betray us later. And then the one Dalek dying just because it lost its prisoners. It's not without its flaws, but I enjoy rewatching it. That's why it's where it's at. And moving into the top 20, I believe at this point, we have Carnival of Monsters. Once again, Bob Holmes. This one's fun. We even get a nice shot of a Cyberman briefly in a John Pertwee story. We don't see that much. I really enjoyed this one. I love the Dreshigs. I think they're a cool creature. I think they're executed really well. They actually work really effectively. Especially for classic Who, I think they're very effective. I love how single-minded they are. They act on instinct, how deadly they are. I love that iconic scene when the Doctor uses the Sonic in the swamp. I think that's one of the most iconic uses he has of it. I love the actual performing duo. The actor and actress playing them are really, really good. I really like that. I like the alien society they're on. I like how they have their own manner of speak. Like, one has twinges. I like when Doctor Who goes to an alien planet and they don't just talk regular English. They have like their own kind of form of dialect they speak. I like that. And that's used here pretty effectively. It's a really good story. I don't really have a lot to say about it, oddly enough, but I like it a lot. It's one I've watched probably, I'd say at least 4 times. I had the original DVD release of it. And I really, really enjoy it. Next on the list is The Time Warrior, the story that not only introduced the Sontarans, but also introduced Sarah Jane Smith, my personal favorite companion, and is pretty much the only historical the 3rd Doctor has. Much like the 6th Doctor, he really only has one, and it's a good one. I like the Sontaran in this. This is my favorite Sontaran story, and the guy who plays Lynx is my favorite actor to play a Sontaran. Again, I believe he also played the Sontaran in Saran Experiment. John's good here. He gets to do some punching and kicking, which is, always fun to watch John do. The guy who plays the main human antagonist, Grath or whatever his name is, he's really good. He even has a really good cliffhanger with the axe. I like him. Liz Sladen is, of course, great. I like the one scientist, the one that can't see and has to make his makeshift glasses. He's cool. The set design looks really good for the interior of the castle and the unit base. It's nice to have a little bit of the Brigadier in here. And I like just how independent Sarah Jane is in this one. The fact that, she even thinks the Doctor is in cahoots with the Sontaran at the beginning, and they follow her plan to capture him, and it's just fun. It's really, really good. It's a lot of people forget that 3 and Sarah are really good together. Like, we used to think of 4 with Sarah, but 3 and Sarah are also really good together. Next on the list is Planet of Evil, easily the most underrated story of Season 13. Usually when people are debating the weakest story of Season 13, it's either Android or Planet, but it's definitely Android. Planet is way better. The set design, that jungle design, do I even have to say it? That is one of the best sets in all of classic Doctor Who. That jungle design just looks phenomenal. I mean, the episode deserves points and praise just for that alone. The realization of the creature, even if it is borrowing from Forbidden Planet, is really nice. The little red outline, that's a really cool effect for the time. I love the performance Tom Baker is putting in. I love the performance Liz is putting in. We even see a little bit of her. We know Liz We know Sarah Jane has a kind of a high ESP reading. We see that kind of sometimes, and you kind of see it here where she can feel when the creature's near. The way the creature kills people, how they fade away and then reappear as basically a drained husk, is pretty cool. The guy who plays the leader of the expedition, I don't really like him. He's a bit two-dimensional. He's really big on letting you know he's in charge. And that weird haircut that's way out of place. I never get over his haircut. It's just weird. Now, I like his second in command, the older guy. He's cool. I like him. The guy playing the professor is really good, which I believe might be the same guy who played the guy who created K9. I'm not sure, but maybe. He's really good. I like him. The effect of him turning into the creature, kind of a Jekyll and Hyde thing, is pretty cool. I like the ending of the story. I like the set design of the spaceship, how it even has multiple levels in some places with the upstairs, downstairs. The scene with the force field repelling the creature is pretty cool. I really like Planet of Evil. It's a really, really good one I like to revisit. Next on the list is Mind of Evil, sticking with the evil theme apparently. Mind of Evil, easily my favorite season 8 story. This one's really fun. It hurts it a little bit that the color looks a little rough on it because it had to be restored to color. They used the chromia dot recovery. And even on the season 8 box set, it's a little rough looking. I mean, it's a miracle we have it in color at all, so I'm not going to complain. But it is a little rough looking, which is frustrating since it's my favorite one of the season. But the story itself is great. We have Delgado back as the master. He is phenomenal. I love that scene with him with the cigar. It does have the one rough cliffhanger when the girl kind of turns into the dragon, which is kind of naff, but other than that, it's good. I love the fact they actually got to have a real rocket to use for the climax. The set for the prison looks really good. I really like it. The one kind of inmate that's kind of ends up being the master's right-hand man, the actor playing him is really good. The actor kind of playing the doctor is pretty good. But then the story is good. Just the machine, the concept of the machine and the side effects of the machine and the effects of when people are dying by the machine, like the water, is really cool. The cliffhangers of John with the fire are really nice. There's actually 2 of those. When you see the flames coming in and he's, those are really cool. Even though they do it twice, I let it slide because it's such a cool effect. And I like that the events of Inferno are still haunting him because Mind of Evil is written by the same guy who wrote Inferno. I think those are the only 2 stories he wrote for Doctor Who. And they're both bangers, so I wish he'd done more. But he even mentions that in Mind of Evil, he references the events of Inferno and how that's still preying on his mind. I absolutely love that he's still, I mean, I hate that he's still having to deal with the stress of that, but I love in story form that it's not just passed over and forgotten, that there's an entire world he couldn't save and how that still haunts him. I like the continuity there. How the Keller machine gets to where it can move around. How it can manifest people actually die, like with water in their lungs or scratches on their face from the wrath. It really lives up to the evil because that machine just feels evil, which I really, really like. I love the scene right after the cliffhanger when the doctor's tied up facing the machine and he's talking to the master of, you asked how I can defeat it? And he's like, well, I can't. I'll tell you now, I can't. I love that whole scene. And the fact that he almost died, the doctor almost died and the master saved him, which shows the master doesn't really want him to die. I do love that scene a lot. And then when the master sees his fears and it's the doctor laughing at him and not respecting him, that's such a good story. It's such a good story. It fills out its 6 parts really well. Next on the list is Revenge of the Cybermen, the most underrated story in all of classic Doctor Who. I love Revenge of the Cybermen. It is a crime that Earthshock is regarded as a classic, and Revenge of the Cybermen is held in not high regard, people thinking it's a weak story, when they're almost the exact same story. Let's be honest. The plot for Earthshock is stolen from Revenge of the Cybermen. Let's be honest, Revenge of the Cybermen has a better subplot, it has a better doctor, and it has better companions. What it doesn't have that Earthshock has is, 1, a more epic feel to it, because I will admit Earthshock is more on a grander scale. It does have a more epic feel to it. Earthshock has that phenomenal episode 1 cliffhanger, which is really good and sells it, and it especially works because the Cybermen haven't been back since Revenge of the Cybermen. And of course it has Adric's death, which does give it points because that was very rare for a companion in Classic Who. But Revenge of the Cybermen, despite not having those things, is still a great story. First off, the location work in the caves, because in what is probably the only time in Classic Who history, when they got to the last story, they're like, hey, we have extra money, which is probably something that was never said by a producer any other time in Classic Who. So they actually got to film on location in those caves. And I think even you would have to agree with me, the location work in those caves is very nice. It's very good. I think Nerva Beacon looks good. I like the continuity of them reusing the set that they used for Ark in Space and how those stories are connected that way. I enjoy that. It gives a sense of familiarity to it, having already seen Ark in Space. I like how it kind of ties in with the moon base, with the disease being spread by the Cybermats and it having the lines running through them, much like it did in the moon base. So I like how it ties in with that. Having to save Sarah. The updated effects look really good too. I gotta admit, on the season 12 box set, Neil did such a good job with those updated effects. Those updated effects are more refined than most. They have like more of a polish to them, more of a finesse to them. Like they had a couple more extra passes. They look just on another level than most of the upgraded effects in Classic Who stories. They look really, really good, especially that final shot when Nerva Beacon's about to crash into the planet. What we see on the view screen, and that when it clicks out to that third person shot of Nerva Beacon rising back up, that is just phenomenally done. My hat's off to Neil on that. Neil, of course, also did the new updated effects for 5 Doctors. My hat's off to him on that too. But I enjoy the story. Yes, the Cybermen are a little more emotional, but I mean, the 80s Cybermen are always emotional. The Earthshock Cybermen are more emotional. So it's not fair to give them a pass and then criticize Revenge's Cybermen for it. It just isn't fair. I like the B plot with all of the politics going on Voga, with the one guy trying to usurp power and gain more control. I enjoy that. I like the mask on the Vogons. I don't understand why the Vogons can't beat the Cybermen. This is the semi-truck sized plot hole. Okay, the reason the Cybermen want to destroy this planet is because their weakness is gold, which, okay, in a nutshell, that's a bit naff too. And this is the story that introduced that, I believe. And I'll admit, the whole idea of they're defeated by gold is utterly silly. Utterly silly, we'll grant that. But this is the planet that's supposed to be the big supplier of it. That's why the Cybermen don't fear it. So when the Cybermen attack, do they fight them with gold? No. They shoot them with weapons that are completely inefficient. Why didn't they be like, crap, I wish we had a weapon that was more effective here on our planet of gold. What's their weakness? Gold. So what should we do? It's like 2 + 2 is not adding up to 4 here. So there's a big plot hole right there, granted. Other than that, I enjoy the story. And I just love how snarky Tom is with the Cybermen. I absolutely love that. That whole speech when he tells them, they're just a bunch of soldiers flying around in a tin can. I love that whole bit. And I don't think so somehow. I love that. He doesn't put up with any crap from the Cybermen. I love it. I love Revenge of the Cybermen. It's so underrated. Next on the list is Creature from the Pit. I absolutely love Creature from the Pit. I just did a review on it, so I'm not going to really harp on it. The criticisms people level against it, I think, are unjustified. Because the creature in most scenes looks fine. It's just 2 or 3 shots, or 3 or 4 shots, where it looks, to be honest. Other than that, it looks fine. Tom Baker is putting in, I think, one of his best performances. You can tell in season 17, Tom Baker is happy. He gets on with Douglas Adams, and him and Lala are on really good terms and in love. Tom Baker is a happy man in season 17. It's one of the reasons why season 17 is so good, is because Tom is just having a ball. And he looks like he is just at 110% in the script. He's got great lines. He is delivering them in a phenomenal manner. That speech toward the beginning of part 4, I harped on it before, is one of my favorite Tom Baker moments. He just nails it when he's laying into the lady Andrasta, or whatever her name is. Andrasta. I'm never going to get that right. And the actress playing Andrasta, she's really good because she plays Andrasta like a petulant child that's never been told no and needs to have been told no as a kid. Like, to me, that's how the character comes across, and I feel like that's how Myra, I think it's her name, Myra, is playing her, and my hat's off to her on that. And then the set design, especially featured heavily in episode 1 in the jungle, is really good, and it's shot on film, probably done in Ealing. And the film looks really good in that first episode and a little bit of the second episode mostly. Now, some of the space effects when they're diverting the missile or whatever at the end look a bit naff, but it's classic Who. I let that slide. The rest of the episode is really good. Next on the list, sticking with Season 17, is Destiny of the Daleks. And say what you want about Destiny of the Daleks, but here's a little trivia fact for you. Destiny of the Daleks is still the Dalek story that holds the record for the highest viewing figures a Dalek story has ever had. Yes, part of that is, of course, due to the ITV strike, which would continue into the next story, City of Death, which still holds the records for the highest viewing figures a Doctor Who story has ever had. But if you look at Dalek stories, Destiny of the Daleks has more viewing figures than any Dalek story ever. Destiny of the Daleks has really grown on me. I even did a video a couple years ago talking about how it was the most mediocre Dalek story ever. Not good, not bad. But it has this rewatchability to it. Maybe it's because it's in Season 17, and I love Season 17. Again, Tom is on top of the world in this. You can tell he's having fun with it. Douglas Adams, even though he didn't write this, I feel like his fingerprints as script editor are all over it. And the updated effects help it, and the Blu-ray added soundtrack, which adds the modulation back to Davros's voice, help. All the little things fix it. You know, seeing the Movellan weapons fire back helps now, because I never like when a laser weapon doesn't shoot its lasers. That just drives me crazy. I need a laser weapon to shoot lasers. And then having Davros sound more like Davros helps the story. Yeah, some of the sets look a bit rough. You can tell not a lot of budget went into this. Of course, it's filmed on a quarry. But it's got a sense of humor to it. It's got a lot of moments I like. I enjoy the paper, rock, scissors bit. Again, a lot of this is down to Tom's delivery. Scissors beat rock. Rock pushes paper. Rock crushes scissors. The way he does that, I love that. That bit at the end, Scara, what are you doing on Scara? Again, a lot of this is down to Tom just being amazing. And something about the Movellan design, it's one of those designs, I don't know if I really like it or really hate it, because it's pretty naff, but for some reason I'm there for it. I love it. It is a little weird that the Movellans have such a strong weakness. You just grab the little thing off their belt and you can that's a bit naffed. The fact they're that easy to beat, that's a little silly. But other than a couple little nitpicks, other than that I could probably talk about. I enjoy it. It's fun. Next on the list is The Three Doctors, my favorite multi-doctor story. Of course, as always, Troughton steals the show. It's always great to see Troughton back and to see Troughton in color. The bickering between the second and third Doctor is the stuff of legends, and the scene when the second Doctor first appears in the TARDIS is one of probably my top 5 scenes in all of Doctor Who. I love that scene. Everything's just perfect about it. We get Benton get inside the TARDIS for the first time. The Brigadier gets inside the TARDIS for the first time. I love Benton's reaction to getting into the TARDIS. That's hilarious. Again, I love that scene with the second Doctor and the third Doctor and Joe inside the TARDIS. That's just wonderful. Seeing Hartnell back one last time is great. Even if it's not there a lot, it's great that he's there, and he very much feels like the first Doctor. Your replacement's a dandy and a clown. Well, have you done anything? We've assessed the situation. Just as I thought. Nothing. That's the first Doctor, and I love it. I love it. I think Omega is a great villain. Stephen Thorne really works here with the bombastic, over-the-top performance, because he's really having to act with his voice, and what a voice it is. I do think I preferred the toned-down version in Arc of Infinity, but for what they're going for with the character here, it's perfect. Plus, I like his outfit. Omega is a great character and is realized well. The effect of the creature that's running around at the beginning, the little red ooze thing, is a pretty cool effect. Yeah, I like the Three Doctors a lot. The little weird creatures that are Omega's servants look a bit weird, but that same can be said about Arkham Infinity. Omega just has some weird looking creatures, but the little odd, I don't know what they are, but they look weird. But I enjoy the Three Doctors. It's a great celebration of all the things that were Doctor Who up to that point. Next on the list is The Ark in Space. One of the stories I have earliest memories of watching in Doctor Who. Probably the first Tom Baker story I have memory of watching. I absolutely love The Ark in Space. It's Alien before Aliens. Tom, of course, the main cast, Tom, Ian, and Liz are, of course, putting in great performances, all three of them. The guest cast really help a lot. The guy playing Noah, a lot really hinges on him in this story because his character has so much to do and go through. The actor playing Noah nails it. I don't know if he's ever in Doctor Who again or not, but he nails Noah. And the woman playing Vyra nails being Vyra. Those two roles are important, and the actors, well, actor and actress, however you want to say it, nail them perfectly. I love the fact that what's happening to Noah isn't just affecting him physically, it's affecting him mentally. I love that. The scene when he's telling her to take command and he's fighting it, and then he's just, we will consume this world. I love that. The cliffhanger when he pulls the glove out of his pockets is an all-time classic Doctor Who cliffhanger. Seeing it slowly progress on him, my childhood memory of it made it a little more effective. But that's what childhood memories do. The imagination fills in the blanks. My childhood memory of that, because I saw it as a child, and then I didn't see it again until I was in my mid-20s, probably. It was It and Inferno were the first two I bought on DVD. I bought, because those are the two stories I had earliest memories of. Those are the ones I wanted. I think I bought Inferno second. I think The Ark in Space was the first DVD for Doctor Who I ever bought. At least I know, I'm trying to remember if I bought it before or after the modern series came out. It was at least the first I bought from Classic, I know. And this again would have been around 2005, 2006, I think, because I wanted to rewatch it. And my memory had nothing to do with bubble wrap. I remember slime all over him as it slowly, every time we saw him, it was more covering him. Like the scene when he's confronted in the hallway and it's kind of up to here on him and he's, hey. My memory of that, stuff of nightmares. And that's what a child's imagination does when you see these as a child. The imagination fills in the rest for you. And that's fantastic. I love that. And it still holds up for me. I love going back. I don't rewatch it a lot because it's one of those, like Genesis, they're a fine wine. I just want to savor them every now and then. They're not like, say, Destiny of the Daleks, which is always something I love to rewatch. They're like Genesis and Destiny are both great stories to me for different reasons. Genesis, I love its rewatchability, whereas Ark in Space or Destiny, I should say, has a strong rewatchability for me. Whereas Genesis and Ark in Space are like the fine wines I just want every now and then when I'm in the mood for top of the shelf, if that makes sense. Such a good story. And I love that Noah finds his humanity at the end of it and kind of saves the day. And I do enjoy the updated effects for it as well, even though they are few. Next on the list is The Seeds of Doom. The Thing, before the remake, the popular version of The Thing existed. The first two episodes of this are bangers. I mean, the whole story is a banger, but I especially love those first two episodes. The only plot hole I have is, why doesn't the Doctor take the TARDIS to Antarctica immediately? Why does he wait, go in the morning when he knows how deadly it could be? Why does he take a chopper? Why doesn't he just get in the TARDIS and go right then? That is a huge plot hole. Other than that, it's wonderful. Once again, Tom gets some action stuff to do. He actually gets to use a gun, but in a way that works. Like when he crashes through the window, and what do you do for an encore, Doctor? I win. I love that. I win. So Tom gets a lot to do. He gets some really cool moments. It's next to the house, the lodge, that John built. I love that. There is no Charles. I love how he keeps trying to get it through their head that it's not Charles anymore. I love his, there is no Charles. I love when Tom Baker gets his angry voice. And see, like, on one hand, this could come across as callous, but you have to understand, he's the only one that fully gets the danger. So it's not that he's trying to be callous, it's he doesn't have time to be sentimental. Like he says in Pyramids of Mars, I can't worry about 5 deaths when I have billions of deaths I have to keep in mind. It's the same thing here. He can't worry about the fact one guy is dead when the entire planet is at stake. And I love that. That's just something about the Fourth Doctor I love. It's not that he doesn't care, it's the fact that he's, like the 12th Doctor says in Thin Ice, well, what happens if, I can't get distracted by it? Why not? Because then more people die. It's perfectly, what Capaldi says there perfectly captures the Fourth Doctor in these situations, and I love that. The guy playing Scorby, I love him. I don't know if he was ever in Doctor Who again, but he just plays this villain you love to hate. Scorby is one of the reasons I love Seeds of Doom. He's just great. You can tell Scorby's #1 priority is Scorby. And I just love him. The guy playing Chase is great too. It's like, it's over the top a little, but in a good way. Not in a hammy, eye-rolling way. It's perfect. You just love that this guy really loves his plants. I mean, even before he goes bonkers, he loves his plants. And the actor playing that does that well. The guy playing Keeler is also doing a good job playing what Keeler is supposed to be. Somebody who is way in over his head. I think the guys, the actors playing the guys who are in the Arctic, even though they're not in the story much, they do a great job. I like the set design in the Arctic. I like the mansion set design. It always bugs me that there's no blood on the choppy thing. Like when the soldier gets fed through it, when we see it later, there's no blood on it. I don't know why that bothers me, unless Chase keeps it really, really clean, which wouldn't surprise me. The scene when the plants are alive and grab like the doctor, maybe Sarah and the butler, that's a cool scene. There's just so much iconic imagery. Seeing the first Crinoid when it still looks vaguely human, it's the Axon suit repainted, we know. But it looks better as a Crinoid. It's just something about it still looking vaguely humanoid that's just chilling. Now, the fully grown Crinoid doesn't quite work for me. It's a bit naff, but it's fine. It's not. It's only a little bit. It's not bad. And then the fat unit shows up, but it's not any of the unit we know. I'd dock it a point or two for that. It would have been great to have had Nicholas Courtney, and if not him, at least Benton or Harry. But it's like units in the story, but not so you'd notice. Basically, that's a little disappointing. But it doesn't take away from the fact this is iconic Doctor Who. This is probably Tom's second best season finale and really close to being the first. It's just a phenomenally good story that every Doctor Who fan needs to see. So, entering the top 10. In 10th place is Robot, Tom Baker's debut story. Now, part of the reason this one is this high is just my own personal love for this episode. I love it. It's fun. It's exciting. It always brings me joy. I've talked before about how I had a girl I was dating who was a Doctor Who fan. The first classic episode I showed her, she only watched Modern Who, was Robot, and she really loved Robot. She found it fun and enjoyable. She thought all the little campy stuff was fun. So I have that memory of us enjoying that together. But I just find story. I love the K1 Robot. Is the design obviously a guy in a suit? Yes, but it's done in that charming classic Who way. I love it. The voice. I mean, it looks so dated. It looks so dated. But it gives it this charm for me that I love. Watching him hold the gun and the hands dangle. I love the K9 Robot. It goes over the top at the end with him being grown to giant size. And the bit with the model tank. I love all of it. But Tom sells this episode because he is the Doctor from the word go. From that first scene he has with Harry when they're skipping rope. You may be a doctor, but I'm the Doctor. The definite article, you might say. He knew it right from the beginning, and he is great. A new house is like a new body's like a new house. Takes a little settling in, getting used to. I love all of that. Kettlewell? You let her go with Kettlewell? Professor, I think you better tell us about that robot. There are just so many moments in this. I just adore Tom Baker. I love the bit when he's trying on his costumes and the Brigadier walks in and he's dressed up like the Viking. You've changed. Oh, not again. No, your costume. Oh, I just love that. Oh, not again. He starts to look in the mirror. It's a little thing, but it's the cherry on the top on that scene for me. You think I might stand out? A bit. One moment. I love it. He's one of the reasons why Tom is easily my favorite Doctor. And my favorite actor to play the Doctor. God, he's just Tom Baker being Tom Baker. There doesn't really even need to be any acting. Which makes it the best kind of acting. I love the bit when he's like, never liked the term impregnable. Sounds too much like unsinkable. What's wrong with unsinkable? Nothing, said the iceberg to the Titanic. Glug, glug, glug. And then, of course, we get our very first, would you like a jelly baby? I love that as well. And I love how upset he gets with Harry when Harry scoffs at the idea of the TARDIS. So much so he takes the jelly baby back away from him. You wouldn't mind stepping inside just to show it's an illusion, would you? Oh, well, if you'd like. Oh, it would make me feel a lot better. I love the way he says that. It would make me feel a lot better. You can tell how much fun I have with this episode. And that's not even just talking about how much I enjoy the story, which I do. I like the fact that the leader of the think tank is a woman. A very independent, feminist type woman. I feel that's very progressive for 1964. And she's irksome in a way that I like. I like the fact that 1974 Doctor Who was doing that. And even calls Sarah Jane out when she automatically assumes it's the guy who's the Doctor she's looking for. I enjoyed that little tit for tat on that. It's such a good story. I get Robot might objectively be up there with, say, Ark in Space, but it's so much fun. And everyone, all of us, we all have those guilty pleasure stories to where maybe objectively they don't deserve to be where you put them on the list, but you personally love them so much that they go high up on that list. We all have them. You do too. Number 9 on the list is the Ribos operation. Another one that I personally just love. Everything about this one almost. The guy playing the Graf Vindicate is great. The guy playing his second in command is great. The bigger of the thieves, Ustav, I believe, I love that guy. I love when him and the Doctor are having their little chat in the room. It's like, oh no, Doctor, I sell planets. And he says it with like this, I don't know the word I'm looking for, pride. He says it with pride that he takes in being a swindler of planets. I love that. Now, I don't really care for his assistant as much. The guy playing him is kind of, but I also love the guy playing Benro. I love the character of Benro. Benro is a character that doesn't have to be in the story. You could remove the character of Benro and the story would still work. But I love having Benro in there. The actor playing him is great. And I just love him as a character. It's a nice bit of growth for the other thief too, the thinner one, as he kind of makes a friend there. And Benro getting to find out that he was right about the stars and that they're other worlds and that they're not ice crystals. I really like that. Again, it doesn't need to be in the story, but the story is so much better for it being there. I love the set designs. Now, the kind of creature that guards the room is a little classic Who naff, but it's fine. The sets, though, look really good. I was really impressed with the sets. I love the opening scene with the White Guardian. Well, what happens to me if I don't? Nothing. Nothing? Yeah, nothing. Ever. Oh. I love that first scene in the TARDIS with Romana. My name is Romana Delundren. Oh, where is it? Well, I'm terribly sorry about that. I just love that opening scene. And I love when they first walk out of the TARDIS and he's getting on her name about being too long. It's too long. Well, I'll call you Romana. I don't really like Romana. It's either Romana or Fred. I'd rather be called Fred. Right. Come on, Romana. I love that. That's so Fourth Doctor. I love that. I actually really enjoyed the rapport that the Fourth Doctor has with like all of his companions in the show, including Romana 1. I feel like they again have a nice chemistry. But I like Ribos Operation, and it has a good ending that I enjoy. Next on the list is The Pirate Planet, my favorite story of season 16. Douglas Adams. I love Douglas Adams when he writes for Doctor Who and when he scripts edits Doctor Who. And this story he wrote is phenomenal. It's got his trademark humor all over it. I love the Captain. Bruce plays the Captain so well. I know they ham the Captain up a little to where you can forget just how intelligent the Captain is. But if you pay attention to the Captain, he's a really cool character because he's smart. I mean, to have been able to set up that thing he does with balancing the planets. I mean, even the Doctor is, I don't want to say impressed, but he's kind of surprised that the Captain's able to pull it off. Even he's a little, wow, you were able to do this and keep it all balanced. Even though, of course, he gets a bit outraged about it too. And matter of fact, I love that scene when Tom's all over there. But what's it all for? I love that. I absolutely love that scene. But the Captain's such a cool character. He's kind of a tragic figure because he doesn't want to be doing what he's doing. He's a pawn. Which we don't really get that until the end of the story, but he's a pawn. And he's trying to break himself free. He just wants to get out and explore the stars like he used to be, you know, a pirate captain. And how much he misses his ship, which crashed onto the planet. I really like the Captain. And I like Mr. Fibuli. Mr. Fibuli! I love Mr. Fibuli. The actor playing him does such a good job. And the actor playing the Captain, Bruce, and the actor playing Mr. Fibuli have good chemistry. The characters have good chemistry. And I like the fact that when Mr. Fibuli dies, the Captain is actually remorseful about it. I enjoy that. It's a great insight into the Captain's character. I enjoy the location work. The film elements for the location work survive in the vault. That's why they look so good. They're going to look great when that season 16 set comes out. The location work is gorgeous. I think the set designs work. The city set isn't the best in the world, but I think it looks fine for Classic Who. I don't really enjoy the scene when they do the Life Force dying because it goes on too long and I find it a bit unnerving. I wish they had kept the original title for the Mentats called The Mourners because The Mourners makes more sense and I like that better. I have read the recent novelization of it that came out, which is based more off of earlier drafts, and I think I do like that better. It actually adds quite a lot to it. The cliffhanger where Tom falls off is a great cliffhanger in the show, but in the novel, there's so much more to it than that. It needs some updated effects. The laser blast look awful, and the Mentats' powers need some updating. The scene when they break everything with just one smack of a wrench is naffed as all get out. But the story makes up for it. I do love the story. I like how the Doctor just walks into the Captain's bridge. Hello, how you doing? I'm the Doctor. It's nice to meet you. Is this your hospitality? I'm underwhelmed. I love it when the Fourth Doctor's the Fourth Doctor. A lot of the dialogue here, I can't really think of examples right off, is just fantastic for the Fourth Doctor. No one writes for Tom Baker, for the Fourth Doctor specifically, better than Douglas Adams. Robert Holmes might write better stories for his era, but nobody writes the character of the Fourth Doctor better than Douglas Adams. He seems to get the Fourth Doctor almost as well as Tom Baker. And when you got Tom Baker and Douglas Adams together, they just fit together like a puzzle. So I love this story so much. And next on the list is Day of the Daleks, specifically the special edition, which is my favorite. I love the original version of the story. I love the omnibus version of the story, but the special edition is my baby. It's the definitive version for me. I think this and Five Doctors, when it comes to like updated effects, is just kind of the quintessential, this is how you do updated effects for a Classic Who story. On a story that needs it to that level. Something like Terror of the Altons doesn't need it to that level. They did what they needed to do for Terror. I like this one. I love the story itself and how it deals with time paradoxes and time, them kind of causing the problem they're trying to get rid of. I like how it's all tied together. And keeping in mind, this is done before that was as prevalent in pop culture as it is now. I think the guy who did Days of Futures Past is even credited this as something, kind of maybe subconsciously he was pulling from when he did Days of Futures Past. So that's pretty cool, actually. The cast is putting in a good performance. The Brig, Joe, the Doctor. I like the guest cast, the Gorilla Warriors. I like how they kind of have their own way of speak a little, like when they're like, do you connect? Do you connect? And they're using the walkie-talkies way before we ever had cell phones, the wireless communicators. I think the original effects in places are good, like the little thing when they're traveling through time where they appear and disappear works pretty well. I never liked the blast effects for the lasers though, how the screen would just flash white and then someone would disappear. That was always disappointing. So I much prefer in the special edition when we actually have the lasers flying, the green and yellow lasers. The sounds they make are a little silly, but it's fine. I do prefer the teleportation effects now when they're disappearing and reappearing, in that time when the Doctor's holding the box and it's shaking the little golds around his hands. Now, they get a little carried away with the effects sometime, like when the cameras are watching them, that little green CTR screen is a little much, or when the girl's waving her hands and it shows the screen, it's kind of unnecessary. The futuristic city with the green sky, the CGI looks a little rough there. I would have been fine with the original shot there. And then the little time corridor looks very primitive CGI, or very of the time CGI, of the time on a budget CGI. So there is a little much sometimes. It wasn't completely necessary. But then you have things like where they film new scenes for the climactic battle to make it look more epic, and it does. When you add in the laser effects and the added scenes and more Daleks being there, so it doesn't just blatantly look like they only had 3 Daleks, it really makes that final climactic scene feel more climactic. I enjoyed that. And then, of course, redoing the Dalek voices. It has to get points just for that. I love the Dalek voices being redone. Nicholas Briggs does a good job. And I love the fact they did it on analog equipment just to kind of give it that classic Who feel to it. I think that was the right choice. I like the Daleks in this one. I like when they confirmed that this Doctor is the Doctor they know, when they had him on the little mind probe thing and it shows footage of the previous Doctors. That's another upgraded effect I like better, when it actually shows footage instead of just the pictures. But just as a story, I like that idea. The guy who plays the controller is really good. I like how he comes to his senses, even though he gets killed. I like his little line about, "Who knows, I may have helped to defeat you." I like him as a character. Just people feel really fleshed out on this. Even the people like the gorillas who don't get the most backstory, they don't completely feel like cardboard cutouts. They feel like they have a little bit of humanity to them, which I really enjoy. It's one of my favorite Dalek stories, and it's definitely a case of the story being really good and the special edition making the execution of the story live up to the story, which I really, really like. And next on the list, just missing out on the top 5, is the Talons of Wing Chiang. I love Talons. It deserves all of the accolades it's gotten over the years. It is just masterful Doctor Who writing. It's Bob Holmes being Bob Holmes. It's Tom Baker's best season finale. I love the location work at night. I think the actor playing Chang is doing a good job. Despite how you may feel about the casting choice in 2023, I think the actor is doing a good job playing the character. And there's actually a lot of nuance he puts into it that I think a lot of younger people, because they're very quick to jump to judgment, which is their right, I don't think they'll actually pay attention to the nuance he puts into the character, which I've talked about before on the channel, about how, like, when he's on stage performing, he talks more in that Fu Manchu broken English. But when he's off stage actually talking, he talks in a more proper English. So like he was doing the other act he was doing the other bit on stage as an act to kind of play into the stereotype to the crowd. I mean, this whole thing is really a satire of the stereotypes in the story of the Victorian London time, of the time that this story is set in. The story is kind of poking fun at that if you pay attention. It's like, people look at that and go, it's wrong what they were doing there. But the story itself is kind of poking fun at that too, if you're paying attention there. And how the mindset was at that time. I love the villains. I really like, names are escaping me today, but the masked guy, the Wing Chiang, Magnus Grell, that's it. I like him as a character. I like his costume design. It has this kind of Phantom of the Opera style look, but his hands aren't gloves, so you can see by his hands the bad shape he's in, even before the reveal of the face. You can tell by his hands he's messed up. And the actor playing him does a really good job with his voice, I might add, of him being creepy and scary and not just generally a very good person. The reveal of when you see his face is fantastic makeup. It looks like melted wax. That's actually a really good makeup effect and a great reveal. Him getting his comeuppance is perfectly justified. I like the little living doll thing. I think it's done really well. The giant rat always looked a little silly in the original version, but it's classic Who, it was fine. The CGI rat still isn't perfect, to be honest, but it is an improvement. I'm fine with either version of this story. This is one I never thought necessarily needed updated effects, but I'd like it a little better with them. Some of the original effects, like the lasers from the dragon statue's eyes, I like better the original effects, but the new ones are fine. But when Chang's hypnotizing people, I do like the upgraded effect of that better. It seems to work a little better. I enjoy this one. I love Tom's outfit too, that Sherlock Holmes style outfit he wears. I'm glad they went with that on the cover of season 14. That's such a cool outfit. And of course we get Jago and Lightfoot, and I love Jago and Lightfoot. And I completely understand why there was talk of them getting a spinoff and why they did eventually get their own Big Finish audio spinoff until, all the way up, I think, until Trevor Baxter passed away, I believe. And I believe Christopher Benjamin's still around. So it's just so many good aspects going on this story that I really enjoy. It's definitely a masterpiece, and there's a reason why it's heralded as one of the greatest episodes of Doctor Who of all time. It deserves it. Getting into the top 5 of 70s Doctor Who stories, we have The Horror of Fang Rock, and I'm pretty sure Ham will be happy to see it here. It definitely deserves it. Ham will probably be like, why is this not number 1? But it's in the top 5. That's pretty good. Now, Talons and horror tend to flip-flop with me. Sometimes I have Talons just above horror. Sometimes I have horror just above Talons. They're very close to me. Horror very much feels like a Hinchcliffe-era story, which it is the first story right after it that makes sense. You still have Bob Holmes script editing. It makes sense. And, of course, these are stories he had already commissioned, so they were still in that style. I love this story. I love it being set on an island. I love it being set at a lighthouse. There's just something about a scary lighthouse that I like. Like even Scooby-Doo episodes at lighthouses I like. I love the idea of something scary and terrifying at a lighthouse. That appeals to me. The way that, especially early on in the story, they keep the Rutan kind of in the dark. You just see it either from the Rutan's point of view or you just see that glowing green glow is really well done. Horror has this great atmosphere to it. It's scary. It's creepy. I can see why it would have somebody on the edge of the sofa or behind the sofa. This is one, especially I think if you see it for the first time as a child, it is going to stick with you. But even as an adult, even with the effects being classic Who effects, I think it's one that stands out. Now, Horror of Fang Rock could use some updated effects. I would love if the season 15 box set gave us some updated effects. It is not essential. The effects do not ruin the story or even compromise the story by any means. Just a few things could be done better, like the boat crashing into the dock, you could do that a little better. The CGI effect for the Rutan itself going up the stairs, maybe some new effects for when it's changing form. When it's climbing up and down the lighthouse, just a handful of new effects to give it a little bit of a polish. The guest cast I like, even the girl, the one that screams her head off, the actress is playing that part well, the part's just annoying. Well, Adeline or whatever her name is, when she got killed, I was like, yes! I really like the guy playing Reuben, who also plays I Know an Enemy of the World. I like the actor playing him, because not only does he play Reuben well, but he plays the Rutan disguised as Reuben really well. He does both of those things. I feel like all of the guest cast really are getting their characters. Even if their characters aren't the most fleshed out characters, I mean, you do get what motivates them at least. And you can tell that some of them are more honorable than others. I think the actors are playing them well. I enjoy some of the cliffhangers like that. I thought I locked it out, but I locked it in with us. I enjoy this story a lot. And I love the fact it takes place at night. There's just something scarier about nighttime. So I love things that take place in the dark. At night, it just lends itself to creepy tension really, really well. And the fact that this is kind of a base under siege episode in a way, because there's no way they can get out. They're trapped there. I love everything going on in this story. Leela is great in this story. Tom is great in this story. I like when he's even trying to explain to her why you don't have to kill all your enemies. I forget his exact wording there, while he's setting up the stuff at the lighthouse at the end, and he's trying to explain that to her. This story just comes together beautifully. I love Horror of Fang Rock. It is a classic for a reason. Number 4 on the list, The Pyramids of Mars. This is almost a perfect Doctor Who story. I love everything going on in it. I love Sarah Jane. I love Tom. Gabriel Wolf as Sutekh is just perfect casting. The way he does the voice with that quiet whisper talk is so much more scarier than if he was being bombastic. And you still buy the threat of everything he's saying he can do. He just feels utterly terrifying. I am Sutekh the Destroyer. Where I walk, I leave nothing but death and darkness and destruction, or whatever it is he says about, you are nothing but my plaything, the plaything of Sutekh, and how, you're just an ant compared to me. I buy all of that. And then the Doctor does a good job of communicating just how big of a threat he is either. Even the Time Lords wouldn't be able to stop him. That bit about, even your lot? Yes, even my lot. It took the combined power of Horus and all 70 something or another of the other Osirans just to put him away in this prison. It really does a good job of explaining just how deadly Sutekh would be if he got free. And when Tom takes Sarah to that alternate future and she sees what 1980 will be like if they don't stop him. I like that. I like that it shows there are consequences in the past that, well, I know everything will be all right because I'm from 1980 and everything's fine then, so it must resolve itself. I love the fact that time is fluid and there are stakes, and if we don't stop him here, this is Earth, and that's very effectively pulled off. I like the guy playing Scarman, who's, possessed, but the actor playing him plus the makeup on him does a really good job of him being, almost like a zombie, almost like a puppet. I really like that performance. That scene when he gets shot and you just see the smoke, that is so cool. That's a really neat effect for something that, it's basically them doing it backwards. Although if you watch the making of, when it talks about how hard it was to actually get that scene done properly, because the guy had to walk backwards and everything, it's really, really cool. It's actually really cool. It also has the guy playing Scarman's brother in it that I like. He's also in Remembrance of the Daleks. He's also in The Invisible Enemy. I like him. I feel bad for him. I mean, he was just trying to help his brother, and he ends up getting killed by his brother. I do like the fact that Tom the Doctor likes the guy, but he's also frustrated that the guy's not getting it that, hey, your brother is dead. He is a corpse. Do not trust him. So Tom's a little frustrated about that, but at the same time, he likes the fact that the guy invented this machine decades before it was supposed to have been invented. He was pleased by that. The fact that when he takes Scarman's brother into the TARDIS, his brother's just all excited. Can I look around? Please do. That smile on Tom's face when he's letting him explore. Like seeing a fellow scientist being blown away by something. I think that pleased the Fourth Doctor. He has that grin on his face like he was enjoying it. I love those little touches. I feel like the set designs are good for the manor house, the location work in the forest, when they're in the temple on Mars. Everything just seems to come together for the story. The mummies look a bit not great. I mean, they look more like robots, which they are, but I mean, they look like robots. I wish they were kind of more realistic humanoid looking mummies. To me, that would have been a little scarier. And the scene when they crush the guy with their chest is a little silly, but I guess they have pointed chests for a reason. That's really my biggest nitpick. I do love the bit too when Sarah Jane hands the Doctor what ends up being the explosive. He's like, ha! It's like, the slightest little sneeze could set these off. I wonder what happened to the guy who put him here. And Sarah's just like, well, maybe he sneezed. And Tom's just like, I love the banter between them. It's such a fun episode. I love Pyramids of Mars. It's almost a perfect episode. It really is. Number 3 on the list is Inferno, my favorite John Pertwee story. I've talked about Inferno a lot on the channel. You guys know I love Inferno. I'm not going to harp on about it here. But what impresses me most is that it is a 7-parter that never drags. it does not need to be any shorter. It doesn't need to be 7 episodes. I mean, it doesn't need to be 6 episodes. It doesn't need to be 4. It is perfect at 7 episodes. Everything is balanced perfectly. Everything is going on that needs to go on, and it all feels like it's being juggled perfectly. I love that. You have all of these different plot points between the drilling going on Earth, the Primoids running around, and the subplot with the alternate timeline where you also have the drilling going on and the Primoids running around. You have all of that going on, and the story balances it all perfectly. Plus, it's nice just to see actors getting to play other versions of themselves. Benton getting to play a slightly darker Benton. Nicholas getting to play the brigade leader with the eye patch and get to hamming it up a little bit. And I absolutely love the alternate version of Liz. It's the best version of Liz we have outside of Spearhead from Space, because I feel like Liz and Silurians and Ambassadors of Death and normal Liz and Inferno are a bit tamer. Like, they just didn't flesh her out as much. But she gets a lot to do here playing alternate Liz, and I know Carolyn John really liked playing alternate Liz too. So I really like everything going on in this story. Although I do think it's odd how the fire extinguishers are just conveniently placed right where you need them, especially when John's running around up on the scaffolding a couple of different times. There just happens to be a fire extinguisher there. I know Lee Binding did a post not too long ago where he wrote the real MVP of Inferno, fire extinguishers, and it showed the pictures, and it's so true. It's that part's a little silly, but I love Inferno. It's the best of the Pertwee era. I absolutely love it. And number 2 on the list, the legendary Genesis of the Daleks. Genesis is a legend for a reason. If you're a modern Who fan and you only watch modern Doctor Who, and there is one story you were told you need to watch, it's going to be Genesis. One classic story. People are like, oh yeah, you ought to watch Classic Who. Which one should I watch? The answer is probably going to be Genesis. That is the Classic Who story. Everybody's always like, have you seen Genesis? You need to watch Genesis. Genesis is great though. Is it a little padded? Arguably. The bit with the clamshell doesn't really need to be there. And to be honest, some of the stuff going on with Sarah Jane when she's separated with them drags a little for me. I'm perfectly fine even watching the omnibus version of it, although I prefer the regular version of it. But I love it. Once again, Tom is putting on a good performance. He has one of his Doctor's most defining moments, some would argue the defining moment, with the Do I Have the Right speech, which is absolutely phenomenally good. And I just love the moral dilemma it poses, and the fact that the Doctor is so indecisive about it. And the fact he technically doesn't have to make the decision, which he thanks Gorman. He's like, oh, I'm so grateful to you, Gorman. You'll never know how grateful. I love that. The introduction of Davros, who is just a phenomenal character. And if Davros had never come back, if Davros had been a one-off here, I think it would have been perfect. I don't mind that he came back, but if he had, there's always a part of me that kind of wishes this would have been his end, because that would have been the most ironic end for him, just to have died there just as he realized his own creations had turned on him. They had become exactly what he wanted them to become. You know, be careful what you wish for. Peter Miles, of course, I believe is his name, playing Niter, is perfect casting. I always love when he shows up in Doctor Who, but I just love him as Niter. That's like his defining role. He does a really good job. Genesis doesn't shy away from the fact what the Khalids are paralleling, the real world people they're paralleling, which is, of course, when the Daleks were originally created, they're supposed to be kind of a parallel to that. But the way, with the uniforms and the way he talks, his clipped manner, the way he even clicks his heels, it's very apparent they're showing you, hey, this is kind of an allegory for these people. And we get that. I like that it shows that even the Thals are a bit of a gray area. The fact it doesn't show, like we'd always thought, that the Khalids, or the precursor to the Daleks, were the bad guys in the black hats, and the Thals were the heroes in the white hats. No. It's a much more gray area than that. You have people in the Thals that are good, people in the Thals that are bad and underhanded. You have people in the Khalid group who are bad, including Davros, but then you also have people in the Khalid race who are good guys and just want to stop it. That's the reason why they tried to overthrow Davros, or at least get him to stop, which sadly doesn't work out at the end. I like the location work. A lot of it's in a quarry again. I like the set designs. I think the set designs are really good. And then just the story is great. And then it ends with the Daleks, of course, giving their speech about, you know, we will prepare, we will grow stronger. It's a great way to end the story. The bit when the Doctor loses the time ring's a little convenient and silly, but that kind of thing can happen in the heat of the moment, so I buy it. Anytime the Doctor and Davros are talking together is gold in this story. Their conversations are some of the best in Doctor Who. Especially, you know, like the bit about when the Doctor says, you know, if you had a germ that could kill everything, would you release it? Yes, that kind of power would set me among the gods. And it does a good job of showing you just how nuts Davros is, just how crazy his megalomania is. And the Doctor knows, okay, there's no reasoning with him at this point. Because this is also the first time the Doctor's encountered Davros, first time he's ever even heard of Davros. So he's still figuring this character out. I think this is kind of when the Doctor starts to realize just who Davros is and what he is right there with that conversation between them. It's just a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. And number one on the list, the greatest 70s story of all time, City of Death. You guys know I love City of Death. The location work looks phenomenally good. Tom and Lala are great together. It's easy to tell they were very much in love in their relationship at this point. They're so good together on screen. Julian Glover is great as the Count. The actress playing the Countess is really good as well. I love Duggan. The guy playing Duggan, my hat's off to him. He is great. I like the guy playing the scientist working on the portal. I like everything about this. I love the little intro scene when we see Skyroth have his accident when he gets splintered. That's a cool opening scene. And the effects there are actually pretty impressive too. I like the bit with the Mona Lisa. It's got some good humor in it. I just love the fact Duggan keeps punching everybody. You know, every time I start trying to talk to someone, you keep knocking them out. I love Duggan how I'll just punch it. Which comes in handy at the end when he punches. I love the fact he can knock everybody out with one punch. You just don't want Duggan to hit you. Just one punch. One punch Duggan. That's what I'm going to call him from now on. He's one punch Duggan. That might be the most important punch in human history. It's a little Deus Machina at the end that they managed to stop it. Just, bah! But I love it. I absolutely love it. The bit with the Mona Lisas is cool. That's a neat little cliffhanger there. The time portal effect, I think, looks really good. I love the little John Cleese and Eva Braun, whatever the woman's name. I can't remember her name. Eleanor Braun? I forget her name. Whatever it is, she's great too. And John Cleese, that little cameo at the end is really great. I think she came back in Revelation of the Daleks, as I recall. Just everything going on with City is so awesome. And I love the bit when, like, he's in the past and he almost gets tortured and he's like, stop! I can't stand being tortured by someone with cold hands. It's such a Fourth Doctor thing to say. And that's a good cliffhanger when he's in the past and he sees Skyroth walk out, the Count, and it's still him. What are you doing here? I was just about to ask you the same question. It's a good cliffhanger. I love City of Death. It's perfect Doctor Who. It's perfect Doctor Who. So that's been me ranking all of the 70s stories from worst to best. I want to know what you think of my list and how you would rank them. So comment down below and let me know. Don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button and the bell for notifications so you never miss out on another video. I also have a Patreon if you would like to support me on that. If you enjoy my channel and want to support what I do. You get early access to almost every video I put up and exclusive videos beside and exclusive voting polls, all sorts of good stuff. Check that out. I also have YouTube memberships available as well. I have a P.O. box if there's anything you'd like to send me to look at and review. Links to my Amazon wish list are down there and my Amazon UK wish list are down there as well. I want to give a shout out to 3 of my top tier patrons, Stephen Crane, Colin Coney, and Finn Perkins. I do appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. It does make a difference. Most importantly, thank you for watching. Next on the list is the Horns of Nimon, or just Horns of Nimon. I can't remember if it's the Horn. No, let's try that again. Next on the list is the Time Warrior, the story that not only introduced the Sontarans, but also